The first thing the system ever asked me to do was simple win. The second thing it whispered was worse drink. The corridor smells like bleach and victory that doesn't belong to me. A boy with clawed hands bares his teeth like he's already collecting applause. The number on his wrist, 1.2, glows like a smug little sun. He slashes. Red scratches bloom across my forearm. The faint screen, only I can see, ticks like a metronome, HP 8 of 10. He lunges again, claws scraping a locker with a metallic. I let him come close enough to count his fillings, and drive a straight punch into the shelf beneath his ribs. Air leaves him in a folded gasp. Before he can reset, I step through hook and ankle, take the distance away, and let gravity finish the lesson. Tile greets him hard. Quest complete. 50 experience awarded. He coughs a thread of red. Then the new line glides up, soft as a secret optional drink the blood of your opponent to absorb 1 stat point. My mouth goes dry. My hands shake. The smear on the tile looks like a door opening and closing. I can picture it, the taste, the warm tilt of numbers. The system never says please. Footsteps funnel in from each end of the corridor, the wrong audience for the worst hunger. Above us, afternoon light presses through glass and halves me simply for standing near it. This is the part where a hero walks away. I take a step back. The hunger passes like a wave that decides the shore isn't worth it. His eyes meet mine with a relief that hurts to see. The system waits, patient, non-judgmental, the way a knife is patient. 2 days earlier, I learned what patience costs. It begins the way bad stories begin, with a stupid decision and a sharper piece of glass. In a room that used to be mine, under a window I never managed to clean, I'm trying to bend a crooked pair of frames back into shape. They've lost 3 arguments with gravity this week. My thumb slips. A sliver bites skin. A bright bead forms and falls onto the flimsy notebook I kept because it was free. The drop spreads like a slow spark, and the paper, just paper, breathes in. Welcome, it writes, as if the ink had been waiting under the fibers. Then profile created. HP 10th, strength 10th, agility 10th, stamina 10th, might affinity detected. Daylight penalty active. At rebuke effectiveness reduced by 50% in direct sunlight. Daily quest assigned. Daily. What? I say to nobody, and the word sounds wrong in my mouth. Drink water. Move your body. Avoid direct sunlight when possible. Report intake. Reward experience. Penalty for failure, fatigue, and vulnerability. It reads like someone stapled a fitness regimen onto a curse. I stare at daylight penalty and laugh the way you laugh when an elevator stops between floors. I rest a palm on the page as if he could travel up into my hand. Something answers, attention maybe. The old house squeaks like it remembers other people's weight. I drink a glass of water because the book told me to, and a click inside my throat feels like a switch. Somewhere I cannot see, a counter moves by 1. By morning, the letter on my table stops being theoretical. The seal has that bureaucratic sheen that means say yes or explain yourself to a wall. The van they send has windows painted the color of clouds. A needle slides come into my arm while a cheerful clipboard tells us how exciting it is to meet our futures. We write a long time. I dream the notebook asks not to be called book. When I ask what instead, it shows me my own name. We wake in a city no one taught us to name. The skyline hides in cloud. Buildings rise like polished bones. Loudspeakers try to sound friendly and fail. We file into a halls that reflect our tired faces. A woman with a voice like a surgical instrument tells us we are here to become something worth counting. They give us bands, glossy as new teeth. Press your inner wrist to the scanner, they say. Numbers flash that make people gasp or bite the inside of their cheeks, depending on how cruel truth is today. Mine flashes the same old nothing, and it's new. That matters. The system pulses in my head like a second heart, daylight penalty active. Tests are designed by people who love spreadsheets. Run, jump, lift, punch. The clock watches. The sun makes jokes only I can hear. My legs are slow. My lungs file for divorce. In the window, I see a version of me with leg bones. Instructors record notes without moving their mouths much. One looks at me like an object that missed its purpose and wandered in by mistake. A boy whose smile blooms like someone discovering electricity sails through his trial. The hall mutters. Someone sets a dummy on fire by accident and pretends he meant to. Another lifts a weight that would compress me into a memory. In that same line, I fail to dent a training pad on my first try. The instructor holding it lifts an eyebrow and waits for my second. I aim for humor and find only effort. The pad sighs. He doesn't. My roommates introduce themselves with the economy of people who understand rationing. The first apologizes for the volume of air he takes from a room. His jokes show up late. His hands are mapped minus thin veins, routes, detours. He says there are 3 ways to survive here: make friends, make a plan, or make a scene. He's terrible at the third. He says I look like I understand plans. The other is quiet in the way that makes noise feel crowded. He watches everything with the 9th life of a cat. He has the look of someone who has stood too close to furnaces and learned to keep his fur. No one tells me what he can do. He doesn't either. But once, when the first roommate can't remember his locker, the quiet one closes his eyes as if listening to a song and points to the right door without opening them. He shrugs when we stare, as if the world sometimes leaves its keys on the counter and anyone could find them if they tried. Night is a teacher that likes me. In shade, penalties lift. Numbers feel honest. The daily quest becomes a kind of religion. Drink, move, avoid the sun, report. My body answers in small increments that feel like finding coins under couch cushions. The book, still only a book, rests under my pillow like fare for a crossing. When I open it, letters arrange into updates that make the ceiling fan seem loud. Inspect locked, inventory locked, store locked, quests active, side effects, mild photophobia, thirst manageable. The first time the system gives me a reward I can actually use, it feels like I've done something unspeakable and gotten away with it. A single point slides into a place in my muscles I didn't know was hollow. The world adjusts by a degree. Doors feel lighter in the hand. Stairs borrow fewer seconds from my day. I nod at mirrors like a man trying to endorse his own existence. The library smells like dust that remembers rain. I go there because everyone else goes to the canteen to argue about what rank means after midnight. I gather books with titles that once helped children sleep: Tales of Teeth and Night, The Bright Lie of Noon, Myths of the First Drinkers. I read about creatures not welcome in modern rooms and write notes I would have mocked a year ago. Sun weakens. Blood strengthens. Rules vary. Consent matters more than the old stories say. I don't know whether I'm researching myself for researching a mistake. The answer feels the same either way. Bullies function like gravity, always there, mostly invisible until you slip. The boy with the claws isn't the first to test me. He's just the first to bleed for it. 2 things lead to that: the system finally granting me a skill called Inspect, and his mouth. Inspect arrives the way a miracle might appear in a car ad: crisp, unfussy, a list you don't have to squint at. Between classes, counting 4 tiles because routine is a spell, the word unfurls in front of me like a flag. I fix on the band of a boy with an expensive haircut. Numbers whisper across reality: LVL 1.2. Strength above average. Stamina average. Ability registered. Confidence not measured, obvious anyway. It doesn't say the last part. Wait at it. His mouth supplies the rest of the math. He says what you don't print on posters with the municipal joy of a worker turning a valve. He says it to an audience trained to believe your future lives in your wrist. He knocks my books from my hands because that's the performance expected of that role. Paper fans across the aisle like staged applause. Before I would have taken the applause and moved on. Tonight, the sun slouches toward the horizon and numbers inside me stretch their legs. I bend to gather my pages. His shadow lands on a sketch where I've copied a symbol from the book. He sees it. Maybe he recognizes it. Maybe he only recognizes what it does to me. He smiles with a lock's click. He tells the crowd I'm playing vampire. He tells me to show fangs. He raises his hands. The claws are legitimate, a feature of whatever blessed his band, and minds the distance between us for the crowd's amusement. They make a ring that explains itself. The system hums like a fridge about to kick on. I don't wait for the hit. I step inside his reach and knock. He folds, then slashes. My forearm burns and my head stars with inconvenient light. The system chimes, clinical and indifferent, in love with outcomes. HP 8 of 10. He swings wide to buy time. I make the space small again, duck, lift, use the numbers Inspect gave me, and put him on the tile. Quest complete. 50 experience awarded. Graded by a storm, that's how it feels. He coughs. Red edges his lip. Then the line that has always been waiting arrives. Optional: drink the blood of your opponent to absorb 1 stat point. Metal and old cleaner hang in the air. Somewhere behind me, my first roommate can't decide whether to cheer. The quiet one isn't here. The people who stare hardest are never in the crowd when it's time to show yourself to yourself. My mouth fills with the idea of a taste. It's nothing like thirst and exactly like it. I imagine bending, and then the contempt, the jokes, the label that would harden around me like poured concrete. I imagine a version of me that doesn't care. This is the part where a hero walks away, I tell myself. The voice sounds less like mine and more like the one people prefer when they're frightened by who you are. I step back. I let him reach his knees. He looks at me as if I've returned an object he didn't know was missing. The ring of onlookers collapses into awkward laughter, the sound a party makes when it doesn't know what it's celebrating. The system does not applaud. The line simply fades. That night I write a rule. The book shines with a satisfaction that is probably my own reflected back at me. The rule is short. I don't take from the unwilling. It sounds noble. It's also strategic. It makes me harder to read and less easy to bait. It gives me a way to say no to the part of me that loves efficiency more than people. There will be exceptions. An honest voice admits there are always exceptions. But rules are rails. You lay them before the cliff. By morning, the sun laughs and I fail again less dramatically. Numbers are still numbers. Instructors who have never bled in front of an audience tell me about focus. My first roommate learns 3 names of people who will never learn his and counts that as progress. The quiet one slips out at hours that's just a separate curriculum. I choose routes by the shadows of buildings as if city planning finally remembered me. Inspect becomes a mirror. I use it on teachers, on hall monitors, on the boy who snores in the common room loud enough to start fights. I learn that most people are only as simple as the number they hate most about themselves. I learn to hold my shoulders to say I am not a threat and not an opportunity, which is how you disappear. I learn the book is not done asking me to be more than a person. The next test of the rule doesn't happen in a corridor. It happens in the alley between the training hall and the dorms, where the exhaust from the big fans warms the air. A second minus year with a reputation for forgetting that rules apply to him has a first minus year pinned by tone and posture, if not by hands. He explains how the world works with the care of a man giving a recipe. The smaller one nods in that survival rhythm that pretends agreement. The system notches the moment with a discreet chime, quest available, intervene, or walk away. Consent. The word rings, like a bright coin bouncing once. I step into the mouth of the alley and ask a bad question if either of them has seen my notebook. It's a plan designed to change the shape of the moment, nothing more. The second minus year turns, sees the nobody with the empty wrist, and smiles an old smile. He tells me to go find my myths in the library. The smaller one's eyes say please in every dialect I know. I remind myself of my rule and then of the loophole. I argue with myself in the time it takes a fan to turn once. He reaches with a hand that's broken noses as a hobby. I angle so the exhaust runs across his eyes. Hot air stings. His balance fails for half a second. Momentum matters to him. He likes starting things and hates when they don't finish on his schedule. I let the start fall apart in his hands. When it's done, when the part of me that has been rehearsing finally gets to perform, I leave him awake and confused about why he's lying down. The smaller one runs without waiting for the moral. The system chimes, quest complete, reward delivered, optional intake declined. I sleep badly with the window cracked, the city's breath hanging in the curtains. Somewhere above the clouds, the sun waits to make me less again. Somewhere between ribs and throat, the rule I wrote rearranges into a promise and a threat. The book turns another page without my hands. A new line sits there like a coin at the bottom of a fountain, heavier than its size and speck graded. The next day, when the Claude boy sees me again, he doesn't speak. He raises his band to show new numbers glowing like a billboard. He wants to try again for an audience that wasn't satisfied. I look at the windows. The sun is a smear behind cloud and sure of itself. I look at the corridor's ends. I look at my hands. The system says nothing. The choice isn't new anymore, which makes it more dangerous. If I could see my life from above, I might pick differently just to learn what changes. But I only see tile faces and a patch of paint bubbled near the emergency door. I hear my first roommate approaching, ready to narrate. I feel a quiet one in his absence, the shape of a person who is most himself when he isn't there. I walk toward the boy with the claws. The tips tremble in the half-minus second it takes for doubt to appear. I see it. Doubt is the only reliable currency here. I intend to spend mine carefully. He steps forward with his claws held high, showing them off for the cameras that don't exist but will be remembered anyway. The band on his wrist hums, a smug little lighthouse at 1.3 now. The crowd's attention tightens like a noose. A teacher at the far end pretends not to see. Cloud loosens the light. Not night yet, not mercy either, just enough shade to make me almost myself. I let the corridor pull along behind him and study the angle of his shoulders. Inspect tastes the numbers like a tongue to a battery. He's stronger than yesterday and angrier about being the same person. He comes in fast. The first wipe is a ruler across the knuckles for not respecting him. I give him my sleeve and a reason to think I'm slow, then step to his blind side and write a short sentence on his ribs with my fist. He makes the sound of a drawer shutting. I follow it with a question mark in the knee. The ring begins to shrink. Courage calculates exchange rates in real time. He tries for theater, something big for the invisible cameras, and I erase the win minus up with a small answer, heel to ankle, shoulder to frame, breath to floor. The system keeps its commentary behind frosted glass. No chime, no prompt, just the quiet vault of a ledger accepting a deposit. When I help him up, he won't take the hand. He scoots back on his palms, eyes skittering from me to the band as if he could scroll to a page where this didn't happen. The crowd dissolves into pairs who suddenly need to be elsewhere. Somewhere behind them, my loud roommate mutters a eulogy for our combined social lives and laughs at his own funeral. The quiet one is still absent, a missing shape the scene makes room for. That evening we eat with people who don't mind being seen with us. Dinner tastes like reheated ambition. The hall buzzes with new myths, most of them friendly to the mouths that carry them. My roommate with the late minus arriving jokes tries to trade portions for information about a girl who made a snowflake out of flames during evaluations. The buyer claims to know a friend of a friend who dated her before she became a problem set. The story is more calories than the stew. After lights minus out, I prop the window with a book I don't like and let the city's breath rake through the curtains. The notebook warms my palms when I open it, patient as water. New lines settle on the page with the quiet authority of street signage. Inspect, upgraded. New tags available, condition, intent, recent exertion. Accuracy influenced by proximity, light, and focus. I test it the way you test a railing. The page doesn't write anyone's future. It only gives me the kind of present other people were born with context. When I close my eyes, the corridor returns, how he shifted before the big move where the weight gathered when the boast arrived instead of a plan. The numbers didn't fight for me. They just suggested the shortest path to not losing. Sleep arrives late and leaves early. Morning slaps me with sulfurous light through thin curtains, and the penalty folds my muscles into wet paper. The daily quest nags without judgment. I drink water like it's a password and move my body because the rules say so. The book pings its small approval. It doesn't have a voice, yet everything it says sounds like one. We have strength trials at noon because someone hates joy. The instructor leaving it has a face that looks hand minus sanded. Respect would be a waste on anyone who misreads him. He speaks without the exclamation point most teachers staple onto orders. When my turn comes, he studies the shadow the weight makes, not me. I lift once badly. He nods as if I confirmed a hypothesis. He writes something that could be a number and could be a sentence. There is a rumor that in the old wars, sunlight mattered only for morale. Here, it matters for math. The head of our cohort gives a speech about resilience while sunbeams lay siege to the floor. He doesn't blink at the light. I don't look at him. Afterward, a student tells another student that numbers are nature, not nurture, and the second student agrees because disagreement would require a different life. At night, the gym becomes a cathedral with its lights dimmed to reverence. Fewer nosy eyes. Few opportunities for experiments to escape their jars. The penalty loosens and everything I am returns to my bones like a tide. The quiet crewmate appears like a coin appearing behind a child's ear. He smells faintly of metal and hand soap. He circles the bag and taps it without touching. His gaze catches on my wrists, then moves to the corners where cameras pretend to sleep. Don't teach the bag your tells, he says, which is his way of introducing himself as someone who has watched people longer than they noticed. It already knows I'm polite, I say, which is my way of telling him I noticed him watching. Our other roommate tries a kick and invents a new way to injure the air. He collapses into a laugh that admits how much of him is bluff. He slaps both our shoulders and declares the team born, then looks nervous that anyone heard him use that word. Later, in the showers, overheard bravado rickets off tile. Someone says he'll be promoted by spring. Someone else says he'll be famous by winter. A third says he'll avoid windows until he's a name. A fourth says nothing, washing blood from knuckles like he's taking off a ring. The first time I notice the store tab flicker, I'm staring at a blister. Skin resents friction with an eloquence you can translate by touch. The page blinks a nude doorway into itself. Store, basic items unlocked. Available currency low. Advice, invest in sustainability, not spectacle. I scroll with a finger and a frown. There are things I need and things I want, and none of them align with the budget the world gave me. Bandages that don't hate sweat. Bars that don't taste like promises. A small vial icon nudges my periphery with a name that makes my mouth dry. I don't select it. I don't need a lecture from my own reflection. Word spreads that an off-campus simulation is scheduled, controlled exposure to danger with instructors ready to snatch us by the collars if we fall into our own holes. The sign Midas uplist blooms with names that enjoy blooming. My loud roommate signs us before I can trip his pen. He shows me our entry with the grin of a thief who thinks he stole time. The quiet one reads the form until it reads him back. He nods once, which is his full poem. The bus rolls us toward the outskirts where the air stops, pretending to belong to people. Fences wear warning signs like jewelry. Beyond them, terrain wrinkled by incidents stretches under a sky that is trying to be kind and failing. Our trainer, same sanded face, same unflappable voice, explains edges we may not cross and boundaries that will adjust if we ask them to in specific words. We break into units with a politely murderous efficiency. Our job is simple in letters and complicated in lungs. Locate a beacon in a broken building, avoid contact with registered hazards, return within the allotted time with all parts of ourselves still receiving mail. The timer starts. The book hums in my pocket like a sleeping insect. Inside, the building is a museum of quiet mistakes. Dust holds the posture of the furniture that used to live here. The stairwell smells like metal memory and something animal. We're not alone. Footprints in Powderhead toward it, or somebody tried to teach manners to with a boot. The quiet roommate touches the jam and decides not to share whatever he felt. My loud roommate narrates every step to keep fear honest. The beacon says we're close with a temperamental flash, the kind of light that can invent a ghost if you let it. Inspect slides forward unmasked. Conditions whisper in a private dialect, tension high. Recent exertion moderate. Intense split between curiosity and horror. It takes me a second to realize Inspect is speaking about us. I adjust my breathing, a useless attempt to trick a tool that measures everything but pride. Then the hazard arrives without the courtesy of footsteps. Something lean as wire and wrong about the angles bounds through the uneducated door. Its eyes shine with the kind of health lab rats don't live to display. It skids in dust and learns where our bodies are going before our bodies do. The book doesn't shout. It doesn't have to. We scatter without discussing the choreography. My loud roommate draws the hazard like he's owed attention. He is, but not from this. The creature understands the language of movement better than we do. It leaps, claws a curtain of sparks from a pillar, recalculates, and chooses the wobble on the floor over the wobble in our courage. The quiet one, or whatever the truth of him is, steps into its path with a motion so economical it could be mistaken for a flinch. He touches, redirects, and suddenly the hazard's momentum belongs to the wall. It recovers with the insulted dignity of predators. In the bounce between decision and action, I move. Not brave. Time. I set my weight behind its hinge and write another short sentence with my shoulder. There's no music to it, only math. The hazard crumples into the suggestion of stillness. My pulse insists on a meeting. The book shows me a prompt I have practiced not reading. Optional, consume to gain a temporary boost. Warning, affects thresholds. Sigh, defects unknown. I do not move. The quiet roommate glances once at me and once at the door where more wrong angles might be queuing. The loud one hears himself breathe too loudly and bites it back. We're ADO the instructor because the rules say so, and because sometimes the rules want you to live. We leave the building with the beacon in a pocket and a wordless agreement not to discuss the prompt in the open air. The instructor studies us like a watchmaker studies a gear. No insult, only interest. He checks the time against the faces he sees. He says we were efficient. He says efficiency is good until it becomes a crutch. He says one of us has learned to make his strengths happen at night. He does not look directly at me when he says it. Back at base, the cafeteria resembles a market where rumors are the only currency. Someone says a team brought back a hazard in pieces and got extra credit. Someone else says the extra credit was infection and they're quarantined under a nice word. Another claims a teacher can smell when you've broken rules and invites those students to a special class that no one returns from normal. It's the kind of story you tell to put a fence around a fear. Fences keep some things in and other things out. Nobody remembers which until it matters. In our room, my loud roommate names the day a victory and offers the ceiling a plan for our rise. He thanks me thrice for doing the smart thing and the quiet one twice for the thing he did that shouldn't have worked. He calls us a team again, quietly, like a superstition. The quiet roommate sits with his back to the window and says nothing. Silence drips through the screen like patient train. I open the notebook, not because I need permission, but because ritual kills fewer people than improvisation. A new quest hums into being. Personal rule recognized, consent threshold established, adaptive path unlocked, substitutes available in emergency, daily quest adjusted, maintain intake without violation. The page offers small rewards that look like lived, survived in pieces. It also offers a new line with the optimism of a menu. Night training available. Daylight mitigation experimental. Mitigation, a word that shrugs at a problem and then solves the part it can reach. I picture long coats and ridiculous hats. I picture a visor that tells the sun to mind its business. I picture a number halved and then stubbornly refusing to stay broken. The store tab blinks like a lighthouse far off. I don't have the currency for the thing it's not exactly offering. That week, my mornings belong to failure with a good attitude and my nights to incremental competence. The instructor with the sanded face occasionally adjusts a parameter I didn't know was there. The workout changes shape without changing its point. My loud roommate learns a trick and swears he invented it himself, then catches my eye, grins, and credits me before I have to earn it. The quiet one stands at the edge of our circle with the patience of someone who knows the wind eventually turns. Trouble finds us because that is the nature of trouble. The second minus year notices my loud roommate making friends he hasn't paid for and decides to collect tax. It happens in a courtyard that pretends to be safe when it rains. He approaches with the confidence of someone who believes in their own rearings. Inspect reads him like a manual, LVL to point first, strength above average. Intent demonstration. Audience required. He offers my roommate a choice that isn't. He wants the laugh rack and the lesson. He's banking on us being background. I speak early to ruin his pacing. I ask whether he wants a private demonstration or a formal one. I say formal like an unfamiliar flavor. He smirks at the word, then realizes a teacher is within earshot and that I've placed the show inside a room with rules. He changes tactics and calls us cowards, which is a classic. I pivot and make it arithmetic. If he wins privately, he gets a story. If he wins formally, he gets a record. If he loses either place, he gets a rumor. I ask what he wants written down. His gaze does the math and discovers the problem isn't numbers. He doesn't want any of this written. He swears, declares the argument boring, and slouches toward a group more willing to loan him scenery. My loud roommate exhales to harden then euphoric ally. He names me a strategist until the quiet one points out that I only Prestel ever the system gave me. That night, I try the mitigation the book teased. It looks like the opposite of magic, fabric, lenses, timings that carve the campus into tolerable corridors. The sun still steals what it can, but I learn to pay a smaller fee. The system marks the effort with quiet increments. The instructors notice improvement in the way professionals do. A line on a chart climbs, and no one says, "Great job, just continue." I prefer it to applause. Applause starts rumors. The library yields a book minus shelved by fate or negligence, a field guide to creatures people pretend not to believe in. The index refuses to say the word I'm not saying either, but the entries want to. They talk in metaphors about gardens that needed a different kind of gardener, about a thirst no one names on record. The margin notes are practical night truths, substitutes, ethics that failed and ethics that didn't. I copy a page about the mind and the mouth being liars under stress and slide it into the notebook. The book accepts the page like adoption papers. Some nights, I dream a corridor the prompts one. I wake to a dry mouth, then a rule I wrote arguing calmly with the part of me that can hear the chime when I'm awake. I hold water in my mouth until my body believes me again. I count the hum of the vent and wish it were rain. A week after the simulation, the instructor calls me by name before class. The sound lands like a warning and a favor. He says he's changing my schedule. He says someone noticed an inconsistency in my performance metrics. He says the new regimen will push the day into a shape I don't like and remind the night who's in charge. He says adapt and looks not at my face but at the shadow my body throws on the mat. The new day burns. Task stack, short and mean, engineered to trip me where the penalty bites deepest. I stumble repeatedly, an elegant sequence of stutters. The night arrives, and I almost cry from the relief of being myself again, which is not the same as being good. The quiet roommate finds me in the auxiliary gym methodically teaching the bag, something it didn't ask to learn. He stands a meter away and says, into the ear, that rules are useful until they become cages. He does not say which rule he means. I ask whether he ever worries about what the band knows about him. He says everything that can be measured becomes someone's job. He asks whether I've considered that the book isn't in my pocket so much as my pocket is in the book. He smiles after saying it as if Owen can convince words to be less true. I laugh because the alternative is to check my pockets. We discover by accident that coffee ruins my attempts at mitigation. The sun slides back into my numbers with fresh appetite when caffeine's in my blood. I switch to an herbal drink with the taste profile of boiled lawn. The book pretends to be pleased. One afternoon, our classes march to the arena for a controlled spar. Controlled means no one dies here if everyone behaves. Alumni sit high in the ribs of the place like saints in a quiet church, watching the next class show its teeth. My name falls into the pairing list beside a student I have never traded words with. Herman reads LVL 1.7. Her eyes read uninterested, which is what people who are good look like when not performing. She moves with the geometry of a well-minus drawn diagram. She's not unkind. She's uninterested in anything but efficiency. The opening exchange sketches the fight coordinates. She's faster by a margin, I'm stubborn. The sun is a smudge behind thin cloud. The penalty scratches politely at my shins. I let the floor teach me how it wants to be used. I let inspect nibble at tags, recent exertion low. Intent measured, condition excellent, somewhere mid-minus match. The crowd's noise blurs into weather. My lungs catch a small stone and I spend 3 steps coughing it loose. She sees the hitch and tests it as she should. I fake a bigger falter and puts pace where she expects closeness. The trap is small and not clever. It's something I can do in daylight. She takes it with professional curiosity. I spend the borrowed beat to write my name nearer to hers on the judge's sheet. We end without drama, a clean exchange, a nod that means we told the truth about our abilities. The instructor says nothing to me, which I try to accept as praise. My loud roommate declares it our best day because no one bled out of an important hole. The quiet one watches the alumni leave and says he envies anyone who has learned to sit in a place like this without remembering why they can. He doesn't say what he remembers. The band on my wrist hums at the edge of perception. The notebook slides a new line under the door of my attention. Milestone, baseline established in sun. Reward available, minor passive improvement at dawn dusk. Caveat, double cost if violated. I take it because some bargains are only expensive later. The next morning dawn tastes less like a closed fist. I can climb stairs without negotiating with each one individually. The sun still subtracts, but no longer multiplies the remainder by pettiness. The book hums. I hum back quietly before anyone can hear me be grateful. We aren't safe. Safety is a myth, someone framed neatly and hung in offices. But we begin to feel like people rather than applicants. We know which hallways are angry at which hours. We know which instructors will cut you off at the knees if you posture, and which will cut you off at the knees for failing too. We learn to sign out of the gym before the night shift locks doors and policies. We learn that when the wind comes from the east, alarms complain for no reason. We learn or codes we shouldn't and forget names we should. The boy with claws avoids my eyes and then, one evening, doesn't. He walks up with the lying posture of someone who has decided not to apologize but wants the benefits. Inspect murmurs, intent uncertain. Recent exertion high. Condition, bruised pride healing. He clears his throat and tells the air between us he wants a rematch someday when it matters. He says it without theater and looks ready to accept any answer. I tell him I prefer days that matter less. He grins despite himself and leaves with some of his boyhood intact. That night the city rains properly. It drums on the roof with a tempo that forgives and forgets. I place the notebook on the sill and let a few drops freckle the cover. Somewhere inside, new quests shuffle and argue over which should go first. I write my rule again, slower, and add a clause about exceptions. Exceptions need witnesses. If I ever cross the line, I don't want to do it on what? I don't trust hungry people alone with their hunger. This includes me. A soft sound at the door, it opens a fraction, then more. The quiet roommate steps in without needing to be invited. He sits on the chair as if chairs were human once and deserve respect. He says some of the second minus years are hunting at the edge of the rules tonight, and he will be outside long enough to be an alibi or a problem. Which one? I ask, meaning which for me? Both, he says, meaning which for him. He holds my gaze a beat longer than our habit allows, then leaves as if he were never here. The door closes without a click. I look at the notebook, which looks back like the calm part of a storm. The rain drums. The city breathes. The band glows faint as a heartbeat under my skin. The new Dawn will ask the same question the old Dawn asked, but I'll answer it a degree stronger. Rain knots the night into ropes. I stand at the window counting how many it would take to climb down, then remember I have a door. The quiet roommate's message was an absence, not a plan. Second minus years hunting at the edge of the rules, he said. He would be outside long enough to be an alibi or a problem. I pick a jacket the sun can't argue with and let the hall swallow me. Mitigation isn't magic. It's roots and timing. I ghost between lamps, using the dead zones where cameras blink too slowly. The courtyard the rain can't fix glistens like a warning. Beyond it, the concrete service spine runs north to the training in X and then east where fences start using their real names. I breathe in the way the book taught me, short math for long lungs, and feel the penalty loosen in the well of shadow. Voices turn the corner before bodies do. To second minus years with the walk of people who think their past victories pay rent on the future. A third hangs back, the kind who carries rumor like a lantern. Their audience is a first minus year trying to stand in 3 places at once, obedient, invisible, elsewhere. I taste the air for the quiet roommate and find a silence with his shape inside it, perched above and behind, using the rain for cover. Inspect and fold without my hands. LVL 2.0 2.1st, strength above average. Recent exertion elevated. Intent, demonstration extraction. The first minus year reads like a question nobody wants to answer. The second minus years don't notice me because I have cultivated the art of not being where you are unless it profits you. They like lessons. The taller one teaches the price of safety. The other teaches the cost of refusal. The first minus year is being educated into paying both. I could announce myself, or I could edit the scene. Hey, I say to the rain, which also means to them, you drop this. I hold out a band I found earlier in the laundry. It looks official from a distance and like plastic up close. It buys me 3 seconds, the amount of time I needed and pretended I didn't. The quiet roommate cuts the distance invisibly. He displaces water, not air. His presence lands like a minor chord behind their dialogue. The taller one glances over his shoulder and decides the weather has become complicated, which makes him aggressive. He steps toward me with the confidence of a man who hasn't tripped in a while. Inspect, tags, wobble, intent, escalation. Audience required. I give him an audience of 1 and the wrong angle. My shoulder writes a short sentence on his center line. He forgets half his syllabus. The other rushes past him to reclaim narrative. And the quiet roommate steals his balance with a 2- finger adjustment you could mistake for kindness. The first minus year bolts, shoes slapping puddles like applause. The rain increases, inventing urgency. Then the hazard arrives, which means someone planned more than extortion. It folds through a maintenance grate with too many elbows and a mouth that doesn't believe in committees. The second minus years didn't bring it. They made space for the fact someone else would. Inspect throws new tags like and vector erratic. Recent exertion none. Intent opportunistic. The second minus years go still in the way people do when an animal has turned math against them. The hazard chooses me because I spoke first. Its lips in wet. Claws sign the air with quick signatures. The book pings quietly, the way a hospital machine reminds you the room still knows you exist. Quest available extract allies. Exit without injury. Contain if possible. Optional intake. Consume hazard to stabilize. Sigh. Defects unknown. The claws rewrite the space where my arm was. HP 6 to 9 of 10. I answer with a line and a comma, drive it into the wall, then step away to make its choice bad. It chooses badly, then corrects. The quiet roommate is the kind of help that leaves no fingerprints. He puts a hand where motion gathers and changes the ending. The second minus years, we discover the urge to be elsewhere and take it, splashing into the dark like animals trying to become rumors. The hazard is fast in the way of things that don't fear falling. It comes again, learning as it does. I feint a stumble. It reads it as invitation and arrives at a place I meant it to be. Concrete persuades it to rest. Breath, so as the cold. The prompt hangs in peripheral vision like a tooth in the pillow. Optional intake consume. Substitutes available synthetic iron complexed temporary. Cost, most of what you have. Side effects, jitters, shallow sleep. Witnesses. My clause about exceptions sits up in my head and asks to be counted. The quiet roommate meets my eyes. He doesn't nod. He doesn't need to. Rain counts. Sky counts. He counts enough for both. I buy the substitute. The store opens like a mouth and closes on my balance with the graciousness of a tax. The vial is thumb minus length and night minus colored, the liquid stained like old coins. I break the cap with teeth. It tastes like a nail you chose to swallow. Warmth moves through me in a measured tide. The prompt softens, then vanishes. Inspect takes new notes, stamina stabilized. Thresholds unsettled. We get the hazard to a place where the right adults will like erectly on the form. The instructor with the sanded face arrives with the quiet certainty of someone the night tolerates. He clocks the scene. To second minus years absent, one hazard inconvenienced, one first minus year alive elsewhere, one rule tested. His gaze touches the bottle rim against my lip, the rain smeared across the label, the way my hands aren't shaking because they could. Write it, he says, not to me, to the air that fills out reports. He looks past me at the quiet crewmate and nods in the specific language of men who have seen leverage. To me, he adds, if you're going to spend for something you keep. I don't ask whether he means money, blood, or wardings. He turns and lets the night sew itself up behind him. Back in the room, my loud roommate wants the story and the applause in equal parts. I give him the story. He provides the applause and the sound effects until the ceiling understands we survived. The quiet crewmate sits at the desk like the chair is a confession booth and sharpens a pencil to a perfect point he will not use. When he finally speaks, it's to the pencil. Exceptions create gravity, he says. Witnesses fix the orbit, I answer, surprising both of us. He smiles like a man recognizing a tune he didn't remember knowing. Sleep is a field of gestures and half-mindless dreams. The synthetic crawls through my rest like a small animal making a den. It helps and it itches. Dawn arrives less cruel. The little passive I bought earlier stretches and makes a bigger shadow. I climb stairs without bargaining. The notebook hums. Expenditure acknowledged. Side effects reduced after 2 cycles if not repeated. New path. Emergency substitutes integrated into daily quest rare. I make tea that tastes like regret and drink it because I'm learning to prefer if regrets to dead principles. Training shifts. The instructor doubles my daylight tasks until failure stops being an event and becomes a terrain feature. I collect losses like stamps, catalog them, discover which trade for wins at dusk. By noon, I'm a folder of wrong attempts. By night, I'm a folder of corrected ones. The gym at dusk gives back more than I put in. My loud roommate invents a celebration ritual for small improvements. He slaps the bag with both palms and bows to it as if apologizing for future violence. The quiet one times my footwork by his breath. When he inhales, I step. When he exhales, I step differently. Somewhere in the rhythm, my shoulders forget they used to be furniture. The second minus ears responsible for the night's entertainment pretend to forget we exist. That's worse than attention and better than revenge. Their absence creates a wobble in the social weather. People who enjoy vicarious damage are disappointed. The boy with claws watches this with a scholar's interest and says, nothing to me that isn't useful. We're called to the arena for assessment 2, a public measuring to make private progress real enough to talk about without lying. The alumni return to the ribs to clap politely with their mouths closed. I am paired with someone whose numbers and expression both say neutral, dangerous in a different way. The task is not to win. It's to show we are citizens of our bodies. High cloud smears the sun to tolerable. The mitigation routes I mapped in my head at noon are worthless at 2. I have to be the person who can be himself where he isn't welcome. We circle. We test. I bleed energy slowly and pretend it is a plan. Inspect gives me tags I can use. Left knee partially mended. Habit of pulling the right when pressure arrives. Intent, clean, victory, ego low. I aim to give her exactly what she wants in a way that keeps me whole. We're on the math to a narrow margin. The instructor's eyes track the line of the match, not the flash of it. He looks satisfied the way carpenters do seeing a frame square. When we stop, I'm breathing like a man who believes in arrogance. The sun considers a new angle and then changes its mind. The alumni leave with the pleasant boredom of people who saw no disasters. I call it a triumph anyway. Later, an office with cold light and a warmer chair. The instructor sits like he's resting, even when he's not. My file lives open on the desk. He taps a page once. Your metrics argue with themselves, he says. Day and night disagree. You've improved at dawn and dusk. That costs. Unpaid, I say. You are, he agrees. I want you to keep the receipts. He means write it down. He means know the prices. He means if you keep buying the same survival, own the store. On the way out, the nurse intercepts me with a smile that doesn't use teeth. Routine labs, she says, for baselines. The needle is polite. I watch the vial fill and think about words I won't say. The book warms in my pocket as if remembering older glass. I imagine it whispering to the blood the way it whispers to me. I imagine the blood whispering back. Evening stretches, it's better mathematics over campus. A rumor comes that a special elective will open for students who can show cleverness without collateral. People try to game what cleverness means. Some plan to stage accidents that can be resolved with dramatic modesty. I plan to do the work where lights are bad. The quiet crewmate says the elective will be a net to collect people like us. He doesn't clarify whether he means to catch or to save. I rate my second rule. If I take, I give. If I spend, I invest. It makes a sound in my head like something locking correctly. The notebook approves without compliment. Ment or quest unlocked. Identify a weaker student and deliver measurable improvement over 2 weeks. Reward, minor, permanent adjustment. Social camouflage. Penalty for failure, none. Penalty for neglect, hidden. Hidden, a word that glances at me from under the stairs and then looks away. I think of the first minus year who ran through the rain like a decision he was glad to have made. I find him the next day near the laundry, where dignity goes to be wrung and dried. He expects a joke or a fine. I offer a route instead, knights a small plan, the math of not minus losing. He says yes with his mouth and with his shoulders. We begin. It's not much to look at: breathing, footwork, the habit of seeing the floor as a sentence rather than a surface. He learns to keep his chin not where fists live. He learns to read hunger in other people's posture and answer with shape, not words. His band doesn't change. His eyes do. The notebook hums each time he finishes a set without apologizing. We become visible to the wrong people. You can smell attention if you've ever had to hide from it. The second minus year, I don't know well, begins Ray minus, routing his walk to intersect ours. His inspect tags are interesting: intent, recruitment, control, audience superiors. He works for someone who loves charts. He asks my new student whether he wants resources. He uses the word like a souvenir he brought back from a trip people lower than him don't take. We're researched, I say, and smile gently to keep the words from bruising. He measures me and writes down the wrong number. He leaves a card in the smaller one's hand. It reads nothing on one side and favor on the other. We throw it away where the cameras can see us do it. When the elective opens, the list fills before lunch. We get in by accident and design. The room is smaller than rumors promised and colder. The instructor is not the sanded minus face one, but might be his cousin. Eyes that read like instruments, voice that warns you when you're ignoring yourself. He says the elective is called applied constraint. He says power is for people who plan to pay for it. The exercise is simple on paper: cross a bright square without being seen by the wrong sensor. The square is lit by 6 different colors of failure. My loud roommate nearly runs through as a joke and stops short when the quiet one lays 2 fingers on his sleeve with such unkind tenderness that he remembers how to breathe. We plan. We watch the colors cycle. We learn that one of them blinks a fraction sooner than the others. The floor is impatient near the west edge. We time breath to light. We step when the blue forgets its job and the square lets us borrow a victory. After, the instructor says you can't always choose the light. Choose the shadow with intention. My band hums. The book warns. My bones agree. Night again, but softer. The city exhale cleans the old fear from the concrete. I find the boy with claws alone under an awning, practicing a move he doesn't trust. He sees me seeing him and sighs. Teach me the part where you don't panic, he says, as if asking for a screwdriver. It's not a part, I say. It's a spec. We'll build it. He nods, reluctant to be grateful, willing to be better. We work. The rain approves in its language. When I sleep, the dream is simple. I'm walking through the bright square at noon with the penalty laughing. I don't run. I step when the light blinks wrong, which is to say when it blinks like the truth. The book in my pocket is warm and heavy. The band under my sleeve hums like a small engine. The voice that isn't a voice says nothing because I've stopped needing it to. I wake before dawn, and for a minute, the day belongs to me. The elective keeps shrinking the margin for error until the room feels like a clock with too many hands. Applied constraint starts with squares of light and ends with hallways that inhale when you exhale. The instructor never raises his voice. He moves a sensor the width of a thumbnail and makes us relearn the alphabet. By the 3rd session, I can name my worst habits in the order they make me fail. I step early when the room goes quiet. I trust corners that haven't turned it. I plan 3 beats ahead and forget the floor under my feet. The notebook hums at each lesson like a clerk stamping receipts. The quiet roommate drafts routes in pencil, erasing air. He marks where risk bends and draws it, or you can only open by walking exactly wrong. The loud one invents a points game, 1 for stealing a heartbeat from a camera, to 4 stealing 2. He spends celebration the way rich men spend time. My first minus year, Menti stops apologizing with his shoulders. He learns to place weight the way people speak in rooms that don't like them carefully without leaving fingerprints. Mitigation becomes a religion with no hymns. At noon, the visor trick helps, the shadow map helps, the dawn dusk passive whispers consolation, and the sun still reaches through all of it because subtraction is patient. The store flashes a fabric that reads like rumor and prices like punishment. I write down the number instead of buying it and let the number become a goal. Word circulates, our rank trial is coming. Donors in the seats, alumni in the ribs of the arena, scoreboards for people who need their opinions to have decimals. Trials mean daytime. The cohort polishes their myths. The loud one practices bows until he forgets whether they're jokes. The quiet one walks the empty arena before dawn, listening to the wake and Crete keep secrets. A logistics teacher visits our elective and ruins our favorite cheat by giving it a name. Naming changes things. He points at our timing and says dependence. He points at our breathing and says ritual. He points at our roots and says rut. Our instructor watches us swallow those words and then waits to see if we can keep moving. We adjust. The square refuses us and then, finally, forgives the new shape. That night, the city presses a palm to the window. I open the notebook. It writes like weather. Trial forecast, bright, busy, unforgiving. Mitigation, stack small edges. Spend them slowly. Caution, appetite grows under attention. Not hunger appetite. A word for rooms, for crowds, for the part of me that enjoys being measured when the numbers behave. I close the page before the page decides to be generous. Mentoring continues. My first minus year, Stance learns honesty. His feet learn to stop volunteering secrets. He shows up with split knuckles and a story shaped like fog. Inspect tags the injury, not the cause. I clean him up with supplies the nurse would swear she miscounted. I give him the rule I'm still negotiating with Survive Now. Make it mean something later. He nods like later might be true. The boy with claws finds me under the awning again. His questions come shorter. My drills answer back in single sentences. He's practicing a move that leaves room for mercy without turning it into a habit. We don't name it because mercy breaks under labels. 2 days before the trial, I sit in the same cold office with the sanded minus face, instructor. My file has grown a spine. He taps the ledger of my choices. You spent on substitutes once, he says. You didn't repeat. Sleep is better than jitters, I say. Keep preferring it. He closes the folder as if stopping a draft. On the day, your orbit will look negotiable. Don't bargain. Orbit, I repeat, and the word sits in my mouth like a small stone. Exceptions create gravity, he says, with the tone of someone who knows which rumors not to deny. Don't mistake falling for flying. Trial day arrives loud enough to make modesty feel like a costume. Banners polished, the kind of clean floor that wants a camera. Donors take notes to turn into buildings. Alumni fold themselves into the shadows and remember being better than us. The sun clocks in early and promises to stay. Brackets are drawn by a system that likes narrative. My bracket reads like someone decided effort should be rewarded publicly, but not too much. My first match sits at late morning, too bright to lie to the body, not bright enough to excuse failure. I warm up in a corridor that smells like paint trying to be new. The band hums like a small animal in a store. The notebook offers the driest of prayers. Baseline, steady. Penalty active, partially mitigated. Edge, bleed seconds from transitions. Heat breath expensive. Witness recommended. The quiet crewmate picks a bench at the edge of my vision and does nothing loud. His breathing teaches mine. The loud one fills the doorway with jokes to new, one stolen, the stolen one landing best. My first minus year sits on his hands like the posture might keep hope from spilling out. Opponent one is built like a question mark tall, curious where pressure goes. Inspect reads, LVL 1.8, strength, honest. Intent perform, not humiliate. The whistle lies about being a bird and we begin. We trade clean deceptions. I pretend to be slower than I am so I can later be exactly that slow without scaring my lungs. He sells a line he never means to buy. I anchor every exchange in habits I built in bad light, foot under frame, frame under breath, breath under decision. The donors clap at the correct times. Their hands are paid professionals. Midway, the penalty pushes a thumb into my balance. Dizziness offers itself like a product. I find the quiet crewmate, borrow his inhale, stretch my exhale over 3 steps, and purchase a discount from the sun. We end on something tidy, a technical, a trap we both saw and both agreed to pretend we didn't. The judge prefers my decision to take points over theater. I bow to the idea of applause and leave with my bones unpaid. Between matches rumor is the only currency. Someone elsewhere spends too much courage and needs 3 medics and a lie on a form. Someone else performs a quiet perfect and gets less attention for being sensible. The donor remarks on my adaptability like a shopper asking if a feature comes in other colors. I make my face costly. Second match rides the worst slice of noon. Shadows thin. Honesty grows teeth. My opponent wears LVL 2.0 like a pressed shirt. Inspect notes, manipulates starts, hates resets, thrives on rhythm. I decide to be rhythm's unreliable friend. The opening is a metronome she wants me to respect. I tap, then trip it. I insert a breath where none belongs. I step into a space that looks wrong to the camera and exactly right to a body that knows what daylight taxes. She adjusts, we all adjust, and keeps charging a fair price for my errors. The penalty gnaws. The dawn dusk passive can't help here. I lean on something I don't name, the square and applied constraint where blue always blinked a hair early. I wait for this light to blink wrong. It does, because light is a liar with habits. I step into the lie and come out holding a point. It stays close. The judge nods in the language of framing, not feeling. I bow to survival again. The loud roommate invents a cheer that sounds like he's insulting the ceiling. The quiet one looks at nothing and approves of everything. In the tunnel, heat presses. I sit on concrete and let my head touch the wall for exactly 3 breaths, no more. The notebook pulses. Thresholds near edge. Substitute no. Strategy. Bleed adrenaline now. Don't mortgage the end. I'll laugh at coast and empty my pockets of urgency. The loud one keeps passersby away with story. My first minus year holds a water bottle like sacrament. We don't speak rules out loud. We follow them until they become us. Final brackets. Afternoon limps toward mercy. The sun begins to apologize by changing angles. My last opponent sleeps inside his body the way a person does who paid their bills on time. Inspect offers something new, intent seek consent. He wants a true exchange and doesn't want to win by tricking a person the light has already subtracted from. We trade clean truths. We're our names overlapping in the middle of the sheet. The crowd learns to breathe between our steps. Light smears to tolerable. My passive exhales. I wait for the blink. I always wait for the blink, and when it comes, it looks like a tiny error and feels like a door. I go through. He registers the lesson at once and lets its tail lessen. The judge signs a line. The arena grants us acceptability. Afterwards, alumni clap with their interior hands. The instrument-ide instructor signs something that will live in a drawer until it needs to be found. The sanded -face instructor cuts across a corridor with a glance that says continue, which is the only praise that matters. The cohort celebrates with the unruly gratitude of people who survived their design day. The loud one tells about my second match 3 different ways. All 3 improve reality. The quiet one stands under a sky finally minding its own business and says orbit like a benediction. I hear gravity answer in my ribs. Back in the room, the notebook opens with a weight I feel in my wrists. Trial complete. Reward, minor permanent adjustment to daylight thresholds. New quest, reveal nothing you don't intend to reveal. Mentorship, expand to 2 students of your choosing. 2. I count the first -year with new eyes, the boy with claws learning not to panic, and a third face that keeps appearing at the edges, someone who looks at exits like instructions. I write 2 names in my head and postpone saying them aloud until morning, when choices sound less like boasts. I sleep into a corridor with no prompts. The floor doesn't ask for proof. The light blinks wrong, my favorite kind of truth, and I step as if I've always known how. Morning makes promises I don't believe in, but I take it anyway. I write the names in the notebook the way you'd sign for a package that could be a gift or a mistake. The first -year with weathered eyes. The boy with claws who's learning not to panic. The page accepts them without ceremony. Mentorship, 2 have selected. Targets registered. Metric, measurable improvement over 14 days. Hidden penalties, soften while active. The new quest, reveal nothing you don't intend to, arrives immediately to collect its rent. Logistics schedules routine follow -ups for everyone who bled for science before the trial. The nurse's smile is warmer than the room. She draws 3 vials and pretends not to notice the way my band hums like a bug trying to escape a jar. Inspect reads her intent as procedure curiosity. The 4th vial is labeled for a lab with a door I've never seen open. I feel the page warm in my pocket, as if it could evaporate a record by proximity. I let the needle finish and do not ask questions whose answers would make new rules. Applied constraint graduates from squares and corridors to partners. The instructor calls it breaking your favorite rhythm. We wear harnesses that tug at the wrong time. Our job is to fight the pull without fighting each other. The quiet crewmate sketches a route in chalk and then erases half the lines because he likes smaps that force you to think while moving. The loud one names the harnesses after donors he doesn't like and makes everyone laugh just enough to keep the straps from turning into metaphors. My mentee learns to plant his feet in a way that tells the day he isn't taking advice today. The boy with claws practices missing by a hair and not apologizing for the restraint. At noon I est a new mitigation pattern across campus and feel the sun slide an invoice under the door anyway. The store waves that rumored fabric again. The price remains a sermon. I turn away because wanting is different from needing, and I already owe myself too many explanations. News arrives with a smug stamp, a field demonstration at the perimeter for select volunteers and their mentors. Donors like to see the process up close. Administrators like to see who keeps their head when the wind changes. We sign because we would have been volunteered if we didn't. The quiet roommate signs last, eye on the exit in the form's upper right corner that says withdrawal allowed with justification. He leaves it blank. The bus idles toward the outskirts where fences stop pretending to be polite. The trainer with the sanded face briefs us with that unflappable meter that implies 2 layers of backup and 1 layer of faith. The objective is simple in official language: enter a controlled structure, retrieve a dead beacon, avoid entanglement with registered hazards, return before anyone starts using the word incident without irony. We form units with the efficiency of people who have learned not to volunteer for other people's chaos. Inside, the building is a soft museum of wrong choices. Dust remembers furniture. Alarms blink like they've been practicing for an audience. The dead beacon pings faintly from a stairwell that smells like metal and animal. We make a plan that admits it will fail somewhere we haven't predicted. The notebook hums like a second pulse. Inspect tags, the feel like a weather report, load minus bearing walls tired. Interior roots constricted. Acoustic anomalies mild. Then the anomaly stops being mild. A siren coughs itself awakes, several blocks away. A fan complains. Somewhere above us, metal learns how to fail in public. The hazard is not the same kind as before. It moves like a rumor that got legs. It comes low, its angle's incorrect in 3 places that matter. The quiet roommate moves like editing. The loud one draws it by saying the wrong thing in its language. I slide to the hinge and write a short sentence with my shoulder, then another with my heel. The hazard recoils, insulted by the lack of poetry. We press it to stillness without earning any adjectives. Move, the trainer says over the radio, even though he's not in our room. We move. Down a level, the building decides to try collapse as a teaching method. Ceiling peels. Dust becomes weather. We search for the dead, become like people who've lost a name, and pretend it's just a word. My mentee finds it with the simple honesty of someone who now knows where to look. He pockets it like a promise. That's when the second hazard announces itself by kicking a door off its hinges and forgetting how to stop. It hits the boy with claws first. He gets an arm up, but you can't parry mass. He slams into a railing. The impact writes the sheet of pain and throws it to my face. I move without planning, the angry miracle of 2 months of drills paying rent. The hazard turns toward my noise. My mentee tries to help and misplaces his foot on a stair that has recently stopped believing in floors. He falls a length of the staircase and lands wrong enough that the air changes temperature. The room cancels itself around that sound. My mentee's eyes look at me with the absolute patience of a person waiting to know whether later exists. Inspect offers a line that might as well be a verdict: internal bleed possible. Pressure unstable. Timer uncooperative. The hazard recalibrate S in the periphery. The trainer's voice narrows. Report. The notebook opens without my hands. Emergency path available. Substitute insufficient. Direct intervention blood chair. Warning binds subject. Sigh. Defects unknown. Thresholds alter. Consent required. Witness recommended. My rule, the one about exceptions, sits up and asks whether it is strong enough to be useful. My clause about witnesses clears its throat. The quiet roommate is there, which may be all the universe requires to let me keep pretending I make choices. I lean close so only the damaged part of the room can hear. I can try something. I say to the boy on the stairs. It changes things. Say no if no. He blinks slow, then once hard. Consent looks like survival trying to sign its name. The hazard chooses that moment to come back from the corner of the frame where stories store problems. The boy with claws buys me 2 breaths with pain he refuses to perform. The quiet roommate turns momentum into a question the hazard can't answer fast enough. The world compresses into the space of a hand. I bite my tongue because the book is strange about rituals and blood in my mouth counts as a key. I press to lips worth of iron to a cut I make on my wrist with a piece of honest stare. It is not a kiss. It is a contract. The book hums low, a transformer in the walls finally doing the job it was installed for. Heat moves into him, a disciplined tide. My head fills with a different weather, wide, cold, and old. The prompt burns out and leaves ash I can use for later. Bond, provisional. Stabilization, partial. Side effects to be mapped. New quests, protect, educate, obscure. My mentee's color improves by a paragraph. His breath stops, bargaining, and starts spaying. The hazard finally picks a direction. I stand between it and the stairs and feel my legs accept an invoice I cannot read in this light. The quiet roommate resolves the path like a mathematician performing a kindness. The boy with claws puts the thing down with a growl he didn't plan to make. The trainer's footsteps arrive like a verdict we earned by not dying. Outside, the sky reassures by doing ordinary sky things. The trainer looks at the blood on my wrist, the color returning to a face that shouldn't have it yet. The wrong bottle cap in my pocket from weeks ago, the quiet crewmate's unreadable calm. He says, write it, which is either mercy or bureaucracy or the only way to keep truth from escaping. Then to me, quieter, if you own the story, it can't be used against you. We're right back with the beacon and a boy who sleeps because he can, not because he needs to. The bus smells like adrenaline taking a bath. The boy with claws sits 2 seats ahead and pretends his shoulder doesn't hurt. I pretend not to notice until I have something useful to say. The quiet roommate watches the window as if the glass keeps secrets. Maybe it does. Back in the clinic, the nurse pretends nothing unusual has ever happened in any room. She praises the good fortune of tight bandaging and the timely presence of instructors. She draws a small, unnecessary to buff blood from my mentee for tracking, and I learn a very specific new flavor of fear. The notebook warms through my shirt like a hand. Reveal nothing you don't intend to. Cover story suggested, shock standard saline pressure. Probability of acceptance moderate, increased by confidence. We say the normal words with the normal faces. The trainer mine assigns the version that keeps people employed. The nurse accepts the paperwork the way Rain accepts roofs. She knows what's under, but her job is above. When we leave, the quiet crewmate touches the doorframe as if asking the building to keep our names to itself a little longer. Might doesn't burn as much when it shows up as a favor. My mentee sleeps like someone whose body has decided to stay. He wakes shaky but present. The bond hums like a thread through the day, tugging when he's too far, quiet when he's near. I write a new rule and hate it a little for existing. If you take responsibility for a life, carry it. The notebook applauds without sound. Guardian path activated. Daily quest adjusted, monitor, teach substitutes, schedule maintenance. Penalty for neglect disclosed only once. I don't want to know the penalty. Not knowing makes me paranoid in useful ways. I teach him how to stabilize in small ways that don't involve me. I buy a thing from the store that looks like vitamins and lies like 1-2. He stops asking the kind of questions that make a person old. I stop pretending I have answers I like. We add the boy with claws to our quiet practice under the awning, and now it's almost a class. He hides his worry for the smaller one by being mean to the bag. My mentee hides his changes by being gentle to everything else. The quiet crewmate supervises the street, which is to say he supervises us, which is to say he counts our exits. Logistics notices our track record and offers us a slot in a discretion module. The invitation reads like a precaution and disguised as a compliment. Their room is small. The instructor is new. She talks about masks that aren't lies and truths that aren't confessions. She calls it operational privacy. I call it learning to live with a book that tells me things and a bond that tells me more. Halfway through the module, the lab that never opens sends a note to my inbox that isn't supposed to be accessible to students. It says there's a curiosity in one of the trial blood panels and they'd like to see me for a repeat under controlled conditions. The date is tomorrow. The sender's signature is a title, not a name. Inspect reads intent research career. Audience, supervisors. Appetite grows under attention. The notebook warned me. Appetite is here in a lab coat asking for time. I take the note to the sanded minus face instructor. He reads once, twice, then folds the paper very carefully and places it on the desk like glass. Do not go alone, he says. Do not go unbustered. If they want consent, make them prove they understand the word. Witness, I say. Orbit, he replies, which is how he says be yourself when it's expensive. The quiet crewmate volunteers to be my shadow without doing anything as vulgar as volunteering. The boy with claws says he'll wait outside the lab like weather. My mentee argues about being left out until I remind him he is different now in ways that draw the wrong kind of noticing. He scowls and accepts, which is growth disguised as pouting. Before the appointment, I go to the library and steal a page from a book that isn't about what I am but is honest about edges, the ethics of sampling, the math of consent, the history of labs that asked forgiveness after they were done. I fold the page into the notebook and feel the tiniest click, like something aligning. Morning arrives annoying and sharp. We present ourselves at the labs or at the exact minute they requested and treat time like a contract. The receptionist smiles, a smile I don't trust, and buzzes us back. A doctor with a title for a first name breezes in, all efficiency and delight. He asks for more blood like the word more has never hurt anyone. He explains nothing he doesn't need to, which is to say nothing I need to hear. The notebook hums in a low register that means careful. Reveal nothing you don't intend to. Consent, you set the terms. Clause, samples match to outcomes or none at all. I'll consent to for tubes. I say, label to me, tested only for what you itemize and sign, destroy after 14 days unless I sign again. Copies of results to me and to the training office. No additional draws without a second consent in writing. Names of everyone who touches it on paper. The doctor blinks as if the furniture started talking. He recovers into a speech about protocols that answers everything except what I asked. I repeat the list. The quiet roommate doesn't sigh. He rearranges the air slightly to make it easier for me to stand here and not want to run. In the end, we agree to 2 tubes and a signature that looks like someone taught him consequences. He draws the blood. He remarks on the viscosity as if we were discussing weather. He hands me a carbon copy of the form that will keep him from pretending today never happened. I leave feeling like I kept it or on its hinges. Outside, the boy with claws leans against a railing and pretends he didn't count the seconds. My mentee waits 3 corridors away because safety for him now also means distance from me until I say otherwise. We reconvene at the awning. We breathe. No alarms sound. The sky minds its business. For now, that night, the notebook writes without being opened. Bond stabilized. New risk, detection through pattern not test. Mitigation, very roots. Very excellence. Very failure. Very failure. A command only a system would have the nerve to issue. I do badly on purpose in a class that doesn't matter to make a chart wobble. I do well on purpose in a class that shouldn't be easy for me in daylight, then skip to gains I could have taken for free. I become boring to look at and slightly confusing to summarize. My loud roommate calls it the art of being forget-tably impressive. The quiet one simply nods. My mentee's eyes clear day by day, their new steadiness visible only to people looking for it. The boy with claws stops pretending his shoulder is fine and lets me tape him. He thanks me sideways. The instructor with the sanded face watches from a vantage point that suggests he's writing a different kind of report, one that uses words like character and trajectory and refuses to define them. We make it through a week without the lab calling me back. We fill it with ordinary drills and small mercies, a breath placed correctly, a step taken when the light blinks wrong, a rule obeyed when breaking it would feel brave and be stupid. The city rains once beautifully. We stand under the awning and let it applaud. Before sleep, I rewrite my rules in the notebook, slower, like etching. If I take, I give. If I spend, I invest. If I break, I witness. If I hide on purpose. The page warms under my hand. The band hums in its sleep. Somewhere in the building, a sensor blinks a fraction early the way truth does, and I practice stepping where it invites me again and again until the step is inside my bones. The weak learns to walk without alarms. We help it. I vary my charts the way the notebook suggested. A good day where I'm not supposed to have one. A bad day where everyone expects excellence. Someone somewhere watching a graph loses interest. That's the point. Attention is appetite, and appetite eats people like me one measurement at a time. My mentee's color returns in shades only a witness notices. The bond hums when he laughs, quiet music I pretend not to hear. The boy with claws stops punishing the bag for the crimes of his past and starts teaching his hands to be honest. The quiet roommate supervises angles and exits and the horizon. The loud one names our routine, then changes its name every other day to keep us from becoming boring to ourselves. A message arrives with a sort of politeness that hides compulsion, debrief. Performance cohort 3A, room 12B, 1300th, midday on purpose. The quiet roommate reads the time first and the word second. He says nothing and adjusts his schedule to become my shadow. Room 12B is too clean to be a room anyone loves. The lights are unlike weather. A small panel on the wall hums as if pretending to be a refrigerator. A man with perfect hair and a name that sounds like a committee invites me to sit. He uses phrases like future contributions and resource channels in alignment with a religious warmth that never breaks into heat. Another person, whose job is to be furniture with ears, takes notes with a pen that might be listening. They ask about the trial, which is harmless to talk about. Then they ask about the lab's curiosity, which is not. Then they ask about my unusual recovery curve at dusk, which is the kind of phrase that recognizes the shape of a secret without touching it. The panel on the wall hums a different pitch. Reveal nothing you don't intend to. I recover faster when no one is staring at me. I say a truth wearing the coat of a joke. I'm allergic to applause. Humor, the note minus taker says under her breath like tagging a bird. They ask to see my mitigation routes. I describe visors and shade-in schedules like anyone could learn them from a pamphlet. I do not draw the map I see in my head because maps make taking easier. They offer a pilot program for students with outlier patterns. They promise daylight scholarships. They promise oversight. The quiet roommate coughs once, the universal noise for time. I stand because he borrowed me that excuse. I'll think I say another true lie. They file my answer into a bucket labeled convertible and let me go. Outside, the loud one leans on the opposite of casual. How many promises? He asks. Enough to build a stage, I say. We'll need exits. Afternoon delivers an emergency the way a dog delivers a stick, eager and wet. A perimeter siren climbs out of itself and refuses to sit. The intercom voice doesn't panic, which panics the new students more than screaming would. We become a river in a hallway with defined banks. The trainers stand like useful rocks. A breach at the east service line, someone says into a radio, calm enough to make the floor rust him. Woven to contain. Midday is a mean teacher. The penalty grinds its heel in as we move. We route through corridors I've memorized as tolerable and emerge into a courtyard that holds heat the way certain people hold grudges. The hazard is the excited kind, young, too many teeth learning to be the bad thing adults warned it would become. It has a handler which is worse than a leash. A second minus ear in a vest with too many pockets directs it with small injuries to a whistle. This is not training. This is theater with knives. My mentee's on tugs west. He's safe, tucked in a stairwell with 3 other first minus years and a door that would lie for them if doors could rate. The pulse steadies, my steps the way a metronome steadies practiced hands. The boy with claws takes the left flank. The loud one narrates, for whoever is listening. The quiet roommate becomes air that remembers how to move correctly. The handler spots me and smiles like a man who has already signed my transfer form. You, he says, happy, as if he invented me. We have a program for people who can stand in the sun and still keep moving. We've met your program, the quiet roommate answers without moving his lips. It recruits with disasters. The handler clicks his whistle twice. The hazard learns to be a comet. We step the wrong way on purpose, which is the right way when you trained under us, where that never forgave you until you made a brand minus new mistake. The hazard chooses the wrong version of me that I set out as bait and skids in a wash of bright dust. The boy with claws pins without malice. I take the handler's arm that holds the whistle and make it decide to let go. The quiet roommate takes the whistle out of the air with the kind of arrogance that never leaves fingerprints. Alarms taper off. The intercom thanks us without naming us. A donor claps from a balcony and writes down the wrong moral. The handler stares at his empty hand and, remarkably, smiles not at losing, but at seeing a shape of competence he wants to buy. We can protect you from variations, he says, letting the word choose its own shape. We can give you work that forgives daylight. And the bill? I ask. Access, he says. To you? To your method. I'm expensive, I say. He reads that as negotiable. Everyone is, he says, and leaves me a card that reads nothing on one side and consideration on the other. The quiet roommate turns it into confetti when he thinks I'm not looking. I don't stop him. The day ricochets into recovery drills. The gym smells like clean rubber and near minus misses. I tape the boy with claws because he let me and because it means he won't pretend to be fine and then break on someone who deserves better. I sit with my mentee and teach him breathing, which is ridiculous and works. The loud one invents a chant meant to drive away Edmund and accidentally invents something like friendship. Night returns with its lenient math. We take the electives capstone, a capillary's minus and minus mirrors layout built to punish lazy thinking. The instructor adds a new rule: the plan must survive a bad diagram. He draws a deliberately misleading map and hands it to us. We have to move while unlearning what we were just told. Some groups rage at the lie and fail. Others obey the map into the obvious trap because obedience is simpler than listening. We let the map sit like a story we decline to believe. We watch the real light breathe. We step when blue blinks early. We cross without being seen and accuse nothing when we're done. The instructor circles a sentence on his clipboard and nods, which is how he says keep going. The lamp does not cold. Their silence has a temperature cold that wants to be familiar. The sanded minus face instructor increases our daylight workload by 5% and teaches me the moral of that change without changing his tone. If you are getting better at the wrong thing, it is still the wrong thing. I rework the mitigation routes again. The visor gets angles it was never designed to have. The passive at dawn dusk feels like a muscle that has learned to flex. 2 days later, a message arrives not to my inbox but to the notebook. That has never happened. System notice and external request attempts to model your pattern. Risk, medium rising to high. Mitigation, randomized choices within rules. Offer, temporary cloak, concealment from predictive models during daylight. Cost, Permanence lot in store reserved. Opportunity loss. The book offering an offer is new. It doesn't feel like a trick. It feels like a bank telling me the interest rate before it changes the terms. I think about admins with charts, about a handler with a whistle where a spine should be, about a lab that calls curiosity a job title. I buy the cloak. It isn't a garment. It's a quietness. It teaches my footsteps new manners. It deletes some of my predictability without touching my rules. The loud one tries to follow me to a machine and loses me for 3 steps, the exact amount of loss that keeps a pattern from hardening. The quiet roommate notices and raises one eyebrow, which in his language is a novel. The bill comes due immediately. Logistics schedules a daylight minus only emergency drill, all reflective surfaces and punitive angles. We are required to run 3 routes while being watched by people who prefer answers to questions. The cloak hums. The bond hums. The penalty presses. Route 1 is built for me to fail handsomely. I fail quietly instead and where their cameras are bored. Route 2 uses mirrors to multiply the sun into an argument. I don't argue. I move like a bad idea I'm not yet willing to commit to, small and uninteresting and just off minus time. Route 3 asks for speed. I do not give it speed. I give it timing, blues, old, blank, rituals, old, betrayal, the map's deliberate lie. The judges hold their pencils as if truth might stain. The handler with the whistle watches from the stands, empty hands in his pockets like he put the fault somewhere safe. The doctor with the title for a first name sits beside him pretending not to know him. I step wrong in 3 different ways no one will memorize correctly. The intercom declares the cohort compliant. The nurse catches me afterward in the clinic with a fresh smile, and needle she pretends is a handshake. Follow minus up, she says as if the word had always meant this. Consent, I say, and the syllables weigh more than the room. She glances at the form and discovers she has rules she likes keeping. Another time, she lies gracefully and lets me leave with all my blood. She is better at her job than the people making it harder. Night returns us to the awning. The rain arrives like a decision. The boy with claws practices his mercy. My mentee tells a joke poorly and laughs well. The loud one names this exact moment and says we will never have it again, then proves himself wrong by making the next moment almost the same. The quiet roommate watches the street and stretches his hand toward the rain as if checking whether the world is still real. I open the notebook because rituals keep me stitched to myself. Rule set. If I take, I give. If I spend, I invest. If I break, I witness. If I hide on purpose. If I bind, I carry. The page warms the way bread does when it remembers the oven. A new line writes itself beneath mine, neat and undeserved. Choose who you will be seen with when the lights are on. It sounds like politics. It is ethics dressed for a meeting. I think of the handler, of the lab, of the instructor who spends praise like a rare coin, of my 3 students, one official, one almost, one who keeps testing for consent. The choice will cost in daylight and pay at night or the other way around. Either way, the bill arrives. I look up at my small, strange team. We're going to be visible soon, I say. That isn't an invitation to be interesting. The loud once aloof with a grin. The boy with claws discards a bad habit like a splinter. My mentee squares his shoulders like a sentence sending in a period, not a question mark. The quiet roommate touches the doorway as we head inside, and the building forgives us for learning in its hallways. When I sleep, the square returns, not as a room but as a sky. The blue blinks early like truth. I step. They announce the schedule for Founders Day like it's a weather report, not a political event. Daylight speeches, donor walk minus throughs, stage drills, photo lines full of people who love to be near competence without touching it. The note from the notebook has been pacing in my head since last night. Choose who you will be seen with when the lights are on. It reads like advice. It acts like a threat. We're on morning routes with a penalty clipped to my heels. The cloak hums at the edge of hearing, deleting just enough predictability to make me feel like a stranger in my own footsteps. The quiet roommate drafts positions for when the cameras wait. The loud one rehearses not speaking at a microphone he will absolutely speak into. The boy with claws practices the small courtesy of standing half a step behind the person who needs to be seen. My mentee rolls his shoulders until they decide to belong to him. The handler with the whistle circulates like cholesterol. He stops at groups who want a future and tries to sell them one. He names the same program by 3 different names depending on who's listening. Daylight Fellows, Applied Resilience, Crisis Drag. He tries the last one on me as if I haven't learned to speak crisis in a lower voice. The lab man with the title for a first name pretends he lost my file and is glad to find it again. He asks after my health like a hunting dog asks after birds. He remarks to no one that some baselines are informative. His smile would be warmer if he believed faces had muscles. The sanded minus face instructor walks the periphery, writing a report on all of us in the way. He looks at angles and exits. He pauses once by our little cluster and says nothing, which is how he says we've chose incorrectly so far. The instrument minus-eyed instructor talks to donors about failure like it's a tool that needs oil. The donors nod and ask about metrics that come with plaques. At noon, we are staged for a showcased reel in the main court. Mirrors have been installed for spectator visibility. Sunlight multiplies into a choir. My mitigation routes turn into confetti. The cloak breathes. The penalty laughs. The intercom introduces us to the people who wrote the checks. The handler stands where the cameras can see him trying not to look like a handler. I choose where to stand when the whistle blows. I choose my mentee on my left and the boy with claws on my right. I choose the quiet crewmate at my back and the loud one in front where his joy will keep strangers from naming us wrong. I choose not to stand near the handler's shadow because shadows have memories. The intercom lists names. I listen for the versions I've kept in the versions they'll try to give me. The hazard is a clean one this time. A drone minus-born glare rig that weaponizes the sun into cones of blindness while low ground units swarm for mistakes. Donors love technology that looks like the future. They don't ask whose future it makes smaller. The drill is simple in letters. Escort a stretcher across the court without dropping the simulated patient or becoming one. The glare rig paints an argument across the floor. The cloak misaligns me, just enough to slip the edges. The boy with claws sets his hands under the stretcher like he's asking forgiveness in advance. My mentee chooses the head position and reads the light like a person who has learned to breathe on purpose. The quiet crewmate does a thing I don't have a name for and turns two cones into one. The loud one counts out loud for the audience, and then, when it matters, only for us. We move like an answer to a question nobody asked politely. The mirrors try to multiply our errors and end up multiplying discipline. When the glare presses hardest, I set my weight into the stretcher frame instead of making it heroic. When the floor wants a slip, I give it a step that is exactly wrong by design. When the rig dips to bait us into speed, we give it timing. We arrive at the far line with the simulated patient intact and our faces arranged like people who didn't just fight a star. Applause lands like whether we didn't order. The handler claps as if he invented us. The lab man watches our shadows, not us. The intercom thanks representatives from the crisis track, even though we never agreed to that name. The quiet crewmate tilts his chin half a degree toward the nearest camera. I tilt mine half a degree away. Labels slide. We stand where we meant to. After the drill, donors shop for narratives. They ask for our stories with words like journey and resilience. The loud one tells his without lying. The boy with claws says enough to keep his dignity from being rented by the hour. My mentee answers like a student because he is. And because students are not for sale. I answer in sentences that leave fingerprints nowhere. The quiet crewmate lets silence make us expensive. The handler waits until the crowd thins and steps in with a card he always carries like a confession. He doesn't offer it this time. He offers a place at his table, the one near a window with controlled light and a short hallway to the exit. He says our little team could do real good with the right backing. He means with the right leash. He means with the right report handed up the right chain. You want access, I say, because the day has taught me how to be tired without being unkind. We want to make sure talent doesn't get lost. He says, which is how men like him say we don't like things we can't predict. We're not lost, the loud one answers, before I can be polite. The handler smiles at me as if the loud one were a radio playing in the next room. He lowers his voice to that intimate register that makes complicity feel like a handshake. There are things daylight won't forgive, he says. You don't have to choose between what you are and what you can be. I do not look at the lab man hovering to conversations away. I do not look at the cameras rehearsing their own lines. I look at my rule written in a notebook that never forgets what ink is for. If I bind, I carry. We've already chosen, I say. We'll be seen together or not at all. He nods as if I've negotiated a number rather than a boundary. I'll be around, he says, which is not a threat so much as a weather pattern. Afternoon leans into the court. The glare rig is carted away, still smug. The donors take their polished hunger to the banquet hall. The bench near the wall remembers my weight like a friend. The instrument minus-eyed instructor slides close enough to count as a witness. You kept your orbit, he says, which is his compliment. Keep choosing your company. The lab man chooses that moment to become official. He appears with a paper that wants a signature, a consent with boxes already checked, the kind that assumes you won't check them because people like you do not get to. He mentions the word anomaly in a way that wears perfume. Consent is a complete sentence, I say, and the quiet roommate's shoulder finds my posture and corrects it by a millimeter. Not today. Curiosity delayed as curiosity increased, he answers, smiling as if we are reciting scripture together. Then you'll be very happy tomorrow, the loud one says, and we are done pretending this conversation is friendly. The sun begins to apologize with angles. The day softens. We retreat to the awning as if it were a chapel. The boy with claws finds a rhythm against the bag that isn't punishment. My mentee discovers a step that will save him 6 times before he even knows it's there. The loud one invents a chant we don't need and we say it anyway. The quiet roommate watches the street long enough to learn the evening's language. The notebook opens like a door that was always unlocked. Public choice recorded. Status aligned. Daylight cloak active. Opportunity cost accrued. New path unlocked. Housekeeping, clean the traces that others leave in your wake. Housekeeping sounds like mops in quiet towers. It turns out to be exits and arrow shores. The elective closed with corridors and maps. This one opens with printers and logs. The instructor who teaches it is the kind of person rooms tell the truth too. She shows us where buildings remember us badly and how to make that memory honest. She does not teach us to lie. She teaches us to stop letting paperwork pretend to know the story. We start small, access logs that clocked us in twice because a sensor hiccuped hid. Camera feeds that mislabeled our faces. A training room schedule that would have put my mentee and me together too often for a pattern analyst who gets paid to notice. We make the record boring. We make it true. We prove nothing. We invite fewer questions. Night hands us a test uninvited. An alarm that should have been retired 3 years ago utters to life in Garage C with the theatrical panic of something that's been ignored too long. It's nothing, should be nothing, until the intercom says the word contain, and then assist, and then says nothing at all, which is a bad word in any language. The handler is there before us because he smells opportunity faster than smoke. The lab man is nearby because curiosity remembers map coordinates. The sanded minus. Face instructor stands where the light is worst, which is where he does his best work. A delivery truck that is not on any schedule sits at an angle that suggests regret. A hazard we haven't seen before steps down from the truck like a man trying on a borrowed body. It wears a vest with little stamped initials that donors enjoy. Third, minus party support and a smile that never made it to its eyes. Inspect throws tags and then corrects half of them. Intent, acquisition. Audience private. Containment false. The handler raises his palms to show he owns the stage. He says words like demo and cooperation. The sanded minus face instructor says nothing, which means the room belongs to whoever tells the next convincing lie. The hazard turns its head and learns us too quickly. It has the kind of gaze you can only buy. It moves toward me because pattern recognition is a market. The bond hums to the west. My mentee is not here, thank every rule I've written. The boy with claws is. He steps half a pace and forgets to be scared. The loud one doesn't monologue. The quiet roommate breathes. The handler smiles his benevolent smile. Show our friends how you are. Mitigation performs, he says. The word friend is trying out its teeth. I step wrong on purpose in 3 ways in a row. The cloak misaligns the math. The hazard recalculates and chooses the wrong breath to interrupt. The boy with claws writes a fast sentence across its knees. The quiet roommate handles momentum like a bill that must be paid in small, precise installments. The loud one does the simplest clever thing and pulls the truck's door strap over the hazard's wrist. Metal proves, as ever, a faster teacher than pride. We do not win. We finish the conversation before it turns into an argument about who owns who. The handler claps twice, slow. The lab man writes nothing and remembers everything. The sanded minus face instructor speaks into his radio in the tone reserved for people who will be asked later why they did anything at all. Write it, he says to the air, and then to us, go home. At the dorm, the notebook is warm enough to feel like fever. I open it because not opening it would be worse. Housekeeping, initiated. External pressure, increased. Advice, keep your story, keep your witnesses, keep moving. I go to the window because windows are the only honest mirrors. The city breeze. The court across the way is newly clean, as if they never happened. I think about the handler's smile and the lab man's silence and the elective that taught me to cross a square without apologizing. I write my rules again not to remember them, but to keep them from changing when I'm not looking. If I take, I give. If I spend, I invest. If I break, I witness. If I hide on purpose, if I bind, I carry. If I am seen, I choose by whom. The page warms like a hand closing over mine. The band hums at a frequency I only hear when I'm too tired to lie to myself. In the hall, the The loud one tells a story about someone else, and it is, without our permission, about us. The quiet roommate checks the door as if doors can learn new habits. The boy with claws sets his bag down gently enough to feel like an oath. My mentee, somewhere west, sleeps. When sleep finds me, it arrives with the square again. Blue blinks early, as always. Truth pretends to be a mistake. I step because the day has earned it. Days start stacking like plates, and no one washes them. Housekeeping makes us neat on paper. Applied constraint keeps us honest on floors. The cloak trims my predictability until charts get bored of me. The handler circulates with his empty whistle minus hand and a new badge that says liaison. The lab man learns to say anomaly without moving his mouth. Then the message stops being polite. Subject mandatory evaluation window. From clinical oversight, provisional studies. Time 12:10 daylight peak. Note, non-compliance will be read as withdrawal from program benefits. Program benefits I never apply for. The words smell like a door closing. The notebook warms against my ribs like a second opinion. External claim detected. Consent, still a complete sentence. Witnesses required. Root, visible. Visible means daylight. Visible means the penalty comes with a bill. Visible also means the lab can't rename what happens. We build a plan made of rules and exits. The quiet roommate sketches the route to the arena, not the clinic. The loud one rehearses, asking a question into a microphone he is absolutely not supposed to touch. The boy with claws checks the straps on the stretcher, real like a man tying down a storm. My mentee looks at me and doesn't ask if I regret him. I don't. At 12:10, we are not in the basement with doors that remember nothing. We are where owners take their tours when the sun wants everyone to meet the main court. Mirrors are still bolted to their frames from Founders Day. Light conducts itself like a choir. The intercom expects a showcase, not a refusal. Good. The lab man arrives with a carton to technicians who learn it how to be cheerful in rooms without windows. The handler arrives with 3 students who would like to be seen surviving. The sanded minus face instructor chooses a shadow and leans against it until it becomes furniture. The instrument minus-eyed instructor clips a pen to his clipboard and records the angles of the room. Mr. Quinn, the lab man says, treating the court like an office. A brief draw. Comparative baseline. Will be done in 5. Consent, I say, because the word works better when it goes first. Of course, he says, and hands me a form that thinks it is a blanket. Half the boxes are checked already. I uncheck, I say, and speak the terms I spoke last time. Itemized tests. Winged hands. Destruction dates. Copies to me in training. No further draws without a second written consent. He smiles like he is swallowing ice. The handler lifts his palms like a man offering absolution. We can do it right now, he says. We'll help you make the right call. We're not lost. The loud one supplies a habit now. The lab man's smile fades 1 lumen. He flicks his gaze at a technician and nods. A drone hums awake under a tarp glare rig, smaller but meaner, until low-ground units unfold like bad ideas learning to stand. It's not violence. It's supervision by other means. The court inhales. The intercom forgets what it was going to say. The sanded minus face instructor does not move. He does not have to. His shadow says, choose your witness. I choose all of them. I tilt my chin so the nearest camera sees my mouth say, no. Then I turn my body into a root. We do not run. We stage it real the crowd understands, stretcher across the court, patient and tact. The boy with claws takes a handle, my mentee takes the head. The loud one takes the corner where light lies worst and fills it with count. The quiet roommate dissolves to cones into one with the geometry that lives in his sleeves. I step half a beat off minus time, the cloak blurring a model someone paid for. The rig knives light at our ankles. Mirrors multiply our mistakes. We give it rhythms opposite timing. Blue blinks, or its cousin does, and the step appears that looks like a small heresy. We take it. The first ground unit chooses my knee. My knee chooses absence. The second chooses my mentee. I see the tug in the bond and lend him a borrowing breath. We progress at the speed of consent. Halfway, the handler steps close enough to smell like authority. You don't have to make this hard, he murmurs, private and public at once. It isn't hard, I answer. It's expensive. For a second, the rig finds an angle I didn't mortgage for. White floods my vision. The penalty leans. My hands are knives entwined. The stretcher tilts. The boy with claws arrests sit with a grip that has learned not to lie. The loud one drops a count to save a rhythm. The quiet roommate puts a fingertip into the worst place and the light forgets what it was doing. We clear the line without dropping a life that isn't one, under cameras that wanted a different story. Applause arranges itself badly and then thinks better. The lab man holds his pen like a needle and reconsiders names. After lunch then, he says, voice friendly with teeth. We'll schedule with training. Schedule with me, the sanded minus face instructor says, stepping forward like a signature. And bring a list anyone can read. He looks at me without smiling. Drink water. We do. We also take the elective none of the brochures mention housekeeping field edition. It meets in a back office that remembers typewriters. The instructor with rooms that tell her the truth gives us a list of places to be boring, sign minus in logs with the hiccup that put me into rooms at once, inventory sheets that spelled my mentee's name wrong in 3 ways that would have become 3 files, camera indexes that flag the boy with claws as hazard minus adjacent because claws make people lazy. Do not lie, she says, tapping the paper as if showing it its own reflection. Tell the truth the system forgot. If you have to choose the version that keeps you eligible to explain yourselves later. She calls it housekeeping because the other word is survival. We erase the wrong names. We fix the double entries. We move a comma that would have become a whipping. The building exhales permission. That night, the court sleeps like a person who worked. We move under the awning. The rain has decided to take a night off. The boy with claws finds a cadence that belongs to him. My mentee learns a step he didn't know his body had saved for him. The loud one invents a new superstition about not naming victories out loud. The quiet crewmate stares at the horizon until the horizon loses interest. The notebook writes while I'm breathing. Public refusal recorded. Sanction pending. Cloak holding. Guardian path. Strain detected under daylight stress. Warning, bond will tug hard if threatened. Offer minor shared buffer. Transfer pain without injury. Witness required. Consent required. Shared buffer is a phrase you could love or fear. We try it controlled, I tell the quiet crewmate. He nods. Nodding is his way of offering his presence as collateral. My mentee listens, face doing the math honest people do. He says yes because he knows what no will cost later. We tap wrists, we breathe, I bite my tongue because the book likes skis, and the world does not change, except that when he stumbles in a drill I do not see. Something aches in my ribs, as if I once fell down those exact stairs and took notes. The lab man does not schedule with training. He schedules with power and then sends power to fetch us. Morning walks in wearing security's uniform. Escort to clinic, the sergeant says gently, as if reading the weather. Routine verification. Consent, I say, which is becoming a reflex, and might be the only one worth having. Under admin order, he replies and shows me a badge number and a memo boiled down to one verb, comply. The sanded minus face instructor materializes like a rule. He reads the memo once. He builds a new route with his mouth. Demonstrate compliance in the arena, he says, in front of donors and training and anyone else whose job includes remembering what they saw. 2 tubes itemized, signed, destroyed on date, or none. The sergeant doesn't like being a stagehand. He likes escalating less. We can do that, he says, because he can count witnesses too. He turns to me. Male. Daylight is mean. The cloak hums. Housekeeping has made our names orderly enough to survive being called. We walk the long way where cameras are lazier. The bond tugs. My mentee has accepted standing near me as a risk worth taking. I wish he were wrong. I am glad he isn't. In the arena, the lab man has prepared a smile and 3 empty boxes. He likes theaters with doors that lock. He dislikes that these don't. The instrument minus-eyed instructor takes a seat, as if his clipboard were a ledger of sins anyone could pay. The quiet crewmate chooses a wall that will forgive him later. The loud one warms the benches with noise until even the cameras get bored of trying to catch a secret. 2 tubes. Itemized. Names. Signature. Destroy minus by date. The lab man hesitates at the last clause, then lets the pen decide. He draws my blood the way he does everything, like the needle is a question the room must answer. He remarks on viscosity again because he loved that line before. He puts labels where labels belong under observation. He reaches for my mentee as if a clause attached to my arm attaches to every life near me. The bond tightens. The buffer hums. Pain lifts its head like a cat to see if there's a lap. My mentee looks at me. He does not ask. He waits. Consent, I say, for both of us. Of course the lab man lies. He offers the form and checked boxes pretending to be generous. My mentee checks 0. The room watches the number of boxes he leaves alone. Security watches the number of faces that remember. The lab man decides to let the future be annoyed with him, not the present. He withdraws, smiling like a favor being saved. The handler who had hoped for spectacle files the moment under negotiation. The intercom thanks us for our contribution to science. The court pretends to be a church again. Housekeeping begins as soon as the boxes leave. The instructor with the rooms goes with security to witness the chain of custody. The sanded minus face instructor writes a memo about memos, all future clinical requests for cohort 3A to route through training with witnesses. The instrument minus eye instructor signs with the pen that makes decisions heavier. The quiet crewmate picks the bit of confetti the handler dropped yesterday out of a corner and throws it away where the camera can see it. We spend the afternoon being average on purpose. I fail neatly in a class that loves excellence and excel discreetly in the one daylight says should own me. The cloak deletes and returns me in equal measure. The bond tugs when my mentee stumbles over a word in logistics. The buffer takes the sting and pays me back in a headache that isn't mine. At dusk, the city forgives us again. The boy with claws asks if mercy can be taught, or if it's just something your hands do when you like yourself. I say both. The loud one declares a holiday from cleverness and makes us walk a lap without solving anything. The quiet crewmate folds paper into shapes that would hold water if paper loved us. The notebook opens like rain, sanction converted to process. Cloak, wearing well. Guardian path, stable under buffer. New quest, builded or no one else knows, safe exit, visible entrance, chosen witnesses. Reward, sanctuary, provision. Caveat, dawn will ask its price. A door I choose. An entrance I control. An exit that doesn't make the building lie for me. I think of a stair behind the laundry that only works if you know the glass blinks twice before it recognizes you. I think of the awning, the rain, the square where blue always blinked early. I think of the court where I said no and the people who were paid to hear it. We'll build it, I say. The loud one asks if it needs a name. The quiet crewmate says names are locks if you're careful. The boy with claws shrugs like a promise. My mentee nods the way people nod when later starts to look real. Night hangs a curtain where day was. I write my rules again, slower than last time, until the pen calms down and the page warms my bones. When sleep arrives, the square returns, and this time the blue doesn't blink early. I step anyway, because waiting for perfect truth is how you get ruined by good lies. We build a door where no one will call it a door. Behind laundry, past a valve that wheezes like an old dog. There's a service stair with a blinks twice when it's tired. Housekeeping makes sit legitimate on paper, authorized maintenance access. Training egress route beta. Observers listed. Applied constraint makes it work when the map lies. The cloak teaches my footsteps to forget themselves for half a beat at the landing where the camera forgets to care. We rehearse in nothing weather, dusk. The loud one counts for our bones, not for the room. The boy with claws carries the stretcher empty, then with sand, then with the quiet crewmate sitting solemn as a saint until we laugh and he pretends he meant to. My mentee walks point and reads light like a book. I'd never have learned it without him. The page hums, approving like a teacher who only nods. Sanctuary draft, traced. Witnesses, registered. Door, status, provisional. Condition, must hold under dawn. Dawn is the bill. So they schedule a cascade audit at 610, a time designed to mean it. Security will sweep egress anomalies, logistics will spot minus check routes, clinical will observe circulation patterns, which means count the lives that interest them. The handler calls it coordination. The lab man calls it responsible oversight. The sanded minus face instructor says nothing in public, and in private moves 3 chess pieces no one sees. We wake in nickel lights. The penalty sits on my shoulders before I stand. The cloak is quieter at this hour as if the day has opinions. The buffer throbs a little through the bond, my mentee's nerves are chattering. I give it a breath to hold, and the ache in my ribs confirms the transfer. We stage it like the world we want to live in. 4 of us and a stretcher, routine route to training. Witnesses waiting at each turn, plain clothes of a kind that still smell like instructors. We step out at 609 and the sun decides to remember me. At the first corner, a mirror, new, bright, unnecessary, turns shadow into accusation. The rig that likes to weaponize you, e-glare hums awake somewhere high. The handler stands too far away to be helping and exactly close enough to be responsible. The labman's associates pretend to check clipboards with columns labeled variants. The intercom asks for calm like a person who has never bought any. I borrow the quiet crewmate's breath and make a decision I can live in. We take the door. The glass, I blinks twice, then sulks. Security sees us enter and does not intervene because the sanded minus face instructor is a witness with a badge and a longer memory than a camera. Logistics notes a scheduled egress. The labman's technician scribbles obstruction because he meant to write control and his hand wrote the truth instead. At the second landing, the light becomes a law. The penalty cuts my numbers until stairs feel like debts. The cloak misaligns 3 steps in a row, which is all I need. Then the rig tilts a lip of light down the shaft like a pour. The boy with claws says nothing and absorbs a corner of the stretcher's weight as if the world is allowed to lean on us a little. The loud one kills his count to make room for silence. The quiet roommate converts scattered glare into one predictable cone with a position I can use. My mentee hesitates, then moves with that dawning stubbornness my rule taught into him. Halfway, the lab man appears at the top landing with a smile that believes in clipboards. There's a safer path, he says, as if offering us water. I look past him and see 2 junior techs setting a cart where I refuse to end up. Consent, I say, and the stair repeats the word back in handrails and bolts. He lifts a page already checked in ways that do not belong to me. The handler at his shoulder watches without blinking, as if eyes were an indulgence. The rig shifts its angle to demonstrate inevitability. The bong tugs. My mentee is white around the mouth and steady in the bones. The buffer offers me the worst of this moment, and I take it, because if I bind, I carry. Pain arrives with manners, which is the only grace pain has. The page in my pocket warms. Shared buffer active. Threshold high. Mitigation. Shorten exposure. Import breath. Displace weight. I shorten the world to the next step. The quiet roommate imports breath with a look. The boy with claws displaces weight like a confession he's willing to make. We descend. The rig argues in cones. The door argues in steel. We answer in choreography. The handler leans to shout something that might be an offer and might be a threat. The sanded minus face instructor 2 floors below at the exit looks up like a man willing to be the last witness if that's what morning requires. At the bottom, a final patch of light waits a rectangle set like a trap under the threshold. Blue blinks early only in my memory. The day refuses mistakes for free. I step anyway, the way I did in dreams I've been practicing. The rectangle was a light pretending to be physics. The step is an answer. We cross. The court at 616 looks like a stage after the actors have left, and someone is deciding whether to sweep. Security watches me watch them. The lab man gathers his carts as if withdrawal were a strategy. The handler files the morning into a folder labeled leverage and doesn't notice the tear at the corner. The notebook writes under my fingers. Sanctuary, established. Door, valid under witness. Threshold, stressed adjustment available. Reward, minor resilience at first light tied to sanctuary. Caveat, grief tax, something given for something kept. I do not like the word grief in a system message. The day explains it without asking permission. 2 hours later, logistics posts an updated schedule that would split my team across 3 buildings at dawn for a week, which is how you break a thing you couldn't buy. My mentee would be assigned to stairwells with mirrors. The boy with claws to courtyard drills with rigged angles. The loud one to PR miracles. The quiet roommate to errands under other people's names. The handler calls it rotation. The lab man calls it ampling. Grief is the cost of refusing to be purchased when someone budgets for you anyway. We go to housekeeping. The instructor introduces a word I thought only existed in stories redress. When a process harms in ways it didn't measure, you document the harm until the process has to look. We build a file that's boring and undeniable training outcomes. Daylight deltas. Witness statements signed by people who don't love us but love rules more. We file it where it can't be lost without an audit. We also build it, or inside our door, a relief schedule that keeps us overlapping at the worst hour. On paper, it looks like kindness. In lungs, it's air. Security signs because the sanded minus face instructor writes the memo. Logistics signs because the instrument minus eyed instructor attaches outcomes. Clinical does not sign, so we leave a line empty for the lab man to explain later to someone who reads lines. It works until they try a new trick. A live donor tour arrives unannounced at dawn 2 days later. Donors in fresh lanyards, a route that just happens to pass our stair. The handler smiles as if he designed the sun. The lab man holds a clipboard that has already forgiven itself. The rig hides behind a banner. The intercom clears its throat. We choose to be boring in front of them. We don't run. We don't perform. We cross a square at the bottom of the stairs with the stretcher level and faces like people going to work. The donors cheer because they saw something shiny. The handler murmurs he can create conditions where we never have to do this again. The loud one says, softly, we'll keep choosing our door. The quiet roommate lifts his chin the length of a comma as if punctuating the sentence. Later, the lab man tries a private email to the sanded minus face instructor, concerns about outliers. Recommendation for targeted oversight. The reply is copied to everyone with a title that matters. Oversight will be targeted where consent exists and not otherwise. Cohort 3A to be assessed under witness or not at all. Policy pretends to be whether. Sometimes it is whether you can move. The price still comes due. The bond tugs hard one night. My mentee is running stairs alone where our relief schedule didn't reach because he wanted to prove something to himself. The buffer steals my breath before panic can. I find him leaned against the rail, asking the air to be a different shape. The day has left. The penalty sleeps. His fear is the part that tells the truth. I didn't want to be your reason, he says. You're not, I say, and discover I believe it. You're the work. We stand there for a minute and let the stairwell teach us to count without the loud one's voice. The book warms the way a hand does when it finally admits it wants to be held. Guardian path, anchored. Mentee status, stable beyond bond. New option, release clause. When student can carry himself, you carry less or you carry him wrong. The clause costs and gives. I loosen the buffer until it hums like a distant machine. The tug becomes a thread instead of a rope. He takes a breath that belongs to him and doesn't look to me to see if it counted. We walk down together and pretend it's to check the door. Morning sends a new email that reads like whether turning clinic to route future requests through training. Consent to be documented. Daylight trials to be scheduled with accommodation where penalty is documented. The lab man signs it because he had to. The handler forwards it to donors with a sentence about transparent ethics. He will call it his idea at lunch. I hope he chokes on a seed and survives better. We adjust to a life we chose. Dawn still charges. The cloak still hums. The door still blinks twice. The square still tells the truth when it looks like an error. My rules still fit in a paragraph, and when they don't, I rewrite them until they do. On Friday, the instrument minus side instructor hands me a strip of paper like a fortune. You are invited to teach one session of applied constraint roots for people the sun subtracts. It's not praise, it's obligation. Rest up nice. We stand in front of students who think winning is an address and losing is a choice. I show them the blue blink. I show them how to step when truth hides under a lie. I tell them to write their rules and find witnesses and build doors that don't require anyone to forget who they are to use them. The loud one heck lets me once so it feels like class. The boy with claws demonstrates mercy like a mechanic shows you why a part failed. The quiet true-mate studies the room and changes one cone of light by standing exactly where he is. My mentee sits in the back and counts breaths like blessings and sends none of them to me. After, the notebook writes a single line. Orbit held. I close it and open the window. The city breathes. The court is empty and honest. The handler exists somewhere wearing a new name for the same job. The lab man catalogs a future that has fewer doors in it than mine. The sanded minus face instructor files our day into whatever drawer keeps him from having to raise his voice. The square in my head keeps blinking. I keep stepping. That night, I rewrite the rules again because ink is how I refuse to forget. If I take, I give. If I spend, I invest. If I break, I witness. If I hide on purpose. If I bind, I carry. If I am seen, I choose by who. If I teach, I build doors. The page warms like forgiveness. The band hums like a small animal sleeping. Somewhere in the building, a sensor blinks early, and I smile not because I needed the reminder, but because it's nice when truth shows up on time. Founders Day fades into hallway weather and paperwork. The city breathes. The square in my head keeps blinking. We build doors and file memos and teach the class they asked me to teach. We learn how to be boring where spectacle breeds appetite. Then dawn tests the hinge. Power flickers at 607, a hiccup that smells like intention. The intercom clears its throat and forgets words. The handler stands on a balcony with a view of 3 corridors at once, wearing a new pin that says continuity. The lab man appears exactly where light will flatter a story if it survives. An email pings my band with the tone of the polite threat. We've learned to expect unscheduled audit, egress validation, present for verification. We are already moving. The stretcher is there because drills are habits and habits are doors. My mentee breathes like a person who learned to count and kept the numbers. The boy with claws check straps with fingers that remember mercy. The loud one holds a silence like a ladder and climbs it when needed. The quiet true-mate chooses air. The rig hums awake high above, a smaller, meaner glare feeder. Mirrors tilt with obedient malice. Security looks toward training and waits for someone with a badge to tell them what they saw. The sand minus face instructor takes the bottom of the stair and makes stillness into a witness. We step at 610 into the day the bill comes due. Blue does not blink. The light behaves. That's the trick. Good lies are obedient. The first cone lands at ankle height. Time to make me choose speed over balance. I choose balance and make speed jealous. The second folds across the mid-minus, landing like a sheet thrown by an angry house. The cloak misaligns one step and then another. It's enough to erase me from a camera that wants a pattern. The penalty leans, taking its share like it paid for the right. Halfway, the power flickers again and the glass eye blinks twice, once, twice, and then remembers its job. I could love it for that. I don't. The handler leans on a rail and smiles like a man waiting for gravity to remember its lines. The lab man flicks his pen toward the cart that wants to be our destination. The rig pours the kind of light that turns rules into decoration. Consent has a weight when it's asked for at altitude. I put the stretcher leg in the notch designed to be a notch and not a story. The boy with claws carries more quietly. The loud one kills his count to make room for a breath. The quiet crewmate places a palm on the wall like you'd calm a horse, and the cone slides a degree. A degree is a country at dawn. My mentee glances at the top landing and sees the lab man blocking the cleaner route with a smile that wants to be a door. He looks down at me. He doesn't ask. He moves. Pain presses its hand to my shoulder through the buffer. The bond tugs and I let it, a trade we rehearsed, not martyrdom, not magic. Share weight, share weather. The book comes approval in a low register. Shorten exposure. Import breath. Displace weight. We shorten the world to the next 3 steps. Breath comes from a quiet crewmate the way water comes from a place that knew to wait. Weight shifts to the boy with claws as if responsibility were a familiar tool. The rig tries cleverness and finds choreography instead. At the bottom, a rectangle of weight set flush to the threshold waits like the last word in an argument you already won. Blue does not blink because blue has learned we watch it. The step in my bones doesn't need blue. I put my foot where practice taught me to put it when truth hides. We cross. Security pretends to cough. The intercom finds its script. The handler smiles the way men smile when the purchase order was denied, but they still plan to own you by lunch. The lab man writes variants 3 times with different pens so he can pretend each word means something new. The sanded minus face instructor says the only thing he ever needs in moments like this. Write it. He's not speaking to me. He's speaking to every camera, every clipboard, every person paid to be a witness. Then to me, hydrate. We do. We also walk the long way to housekeeping, field edition. We fix the log that pretended we weren't scheduled. We correct the camera index that mislabeled my step as error instead of practice. We file the thing you file when someone tries to rename your morning into theirs. The notebook sings its small, unshowy song. Sanctuary verified. Witness present. Adjustment available. Dawn conversion. Personal threshold traded for shared protection in sanctuary routes. Cost grief tax. Outside sanctuary. Mornings will take more. Reward inside sanctuary at first light. Allies within line of sight ignore the first penalty tier. The bill has numbers. It isn't a bargain. It's a decision. If I say yes, my mornings away from the door will bite harder. If I say no, there's will. I think of the boy who asked not to be my reason and became my work. I think of the loud one's laugh closing a wound I didn't know I had. I think of the quiet crewmate counting exits like prayers. I think of the boy with claws practicing mercy until it becomes him. I pay. The page warms the way metal warms after you've decided to use it for what it was made for. Inside the sanctuary at first light, the system gives back something it took from me a week at a time. Outside, the penalty sharpens its teeth and smiles. We test it the only way that matters at dawn in ordinary weather with nothing to prove except the day. We take the door at 611 with no audience, but the building and whoever's job is to care about buildings. Inside the stairs echo, the air holds its breath. The boy with claws does not wince when light kisses his hands. My mentee's shoulders belong to him without negotiation. The loud one counts exactly enough and then shuts up. The quiet crewmate places his palm and moves a cone by the width of a breath. I carry the ache that belongs to me, and the ache that belongs to love and discover both are lighter when named. Outside sanctuary later that week, the sun takes its margin with interest. I miss a step in logistics on purpose to build a wobble into my graph. I fail neatly at an exercise designed by someone who never bled in public because neatness gets you forgiveness and forgiveness buys time. The lab man, deprived of easy theater, publishes a memo about respecting consent norms during observational windows and signs 3 names under it that will survive his departure. The handler gets a new assignment and a new word for trying partnerships. He becomes whether I can predict. The court goes back to being a room for feet and breath. Apply constraint rotates to new games that punish people who learn it the old ones too well. Housekeeping gives us forms that prevent people who dislike us from pretending rules were broken by our existence. The elective I each fills with students who want to be difficult to ruin and students who want to learn how to ruin difficult people. I speak as if both groups deserve it, or I think they do. When the lab's carbon copies arrive 2 weeks later, they read like a truce, numbers within expected variance. Viscosity within the range many bodies share. Anomalies downgraded to interesting outliers. The instrument minus-eyed instructor signs the receiving more carefully than necessary. The sanded minus face instructor files the form like a man slotting the last piece into a frame. Life becomes rhythm with spikes. Dawn cuts. Dusk gives. The door blinks twice and learns to love us. The square blinks early often enough to keep me honest, late often enough to keep me humble. The loud one finds a way to befriend a guard by telling the truth about why he talks so much. The boy with claws finds a way to be soft that doesn't make him small. The quiet crewmate admits aloud that he likes exits because someone once locked him in a room where the only door was a story. My mentee shows up to training without looking at me to confirm he belongs there. He does. On a night when rain forgets our campus for better roofs, a message arrives in the notebook that is not like the messages that came before. External contact requests handshake. Origin off-grid encrypted. Content, we see your door. We see how you pay. If you want a map that shows more than this city, say yes. Risk unquantified. Offer night charter, codex of places where penalties are different and rules are old. Cost, you cannot take it alone. You cannot take it to people who would sell it. The book has never asked me for company as a condition. It has tolerated, recorded, rewarded. It has never said bring witnesses or don't come. I read the words twice. They smell like history. They taste like a path that might hurt me the right way. We sit under the awning with paper cups and a sky that has decided to be kind this hour. I tell them the offer without pretending I deserve to choose alone. The loud one volunteers to say yes before I finish the sentence because he is designed to jump. Then he stops himself because he has been learning. The boy with claws listens with hands that want to do work. The quiet crewmate looks at the horizon like a man tracing an old scar. My mentee waits to see if the word we includes him. It does. It always will if I keep my orbit. We vote by breath. We say yes. The handshake isn't a light show, isn't a door opening midair, isn't a page catching fire. It's a map that draws itself on the inside of my eyelids when I blink. Routes at night between cities like ours. Places where dawn is kinder because someone paid a bill long ago. Houses that aren't houses but codes for sanctuaries. And one knock that should only be used if you love the people you will have to become. The book adds one line that feels like a season ending the right way. Arc complete. Next, travel by night. I laugh quietly because I was a boy once in a corridor with a system that said win and then drink, and I thought the choice was the whole story. The story turned out to be carry and then teach and now go. I write my rules again not because I forgot them, but because rules are better when they've been said recently. If I take, I give. If I spend, I invest. If I break, I witness. If I hide on purpose. If I bind, I carry. If I am seen, I choose by whom. If I teach, I build doors. If I go with witnesses. The page warms. The band hums. The door behind laundry blinks twice as if it heard us and wants to come. We sleep a little before we leave because leaving tired is how you make strangers of your own feet. Before dawn, we walk the stair one more time because gratitude should touch stone. The rectangle under the threshold glows faintly as if blue is trying to be early for once. I step exactly where practice says and feel the city release us without resentment. The sanded minus face instructor stands in the court and does not stop us. He lifts his chin by a millimeter, which in his language is pride he will deny in any room with minutes. We cross the square in my head that started all of this and it blinks on time. The day is young and mean. We pay what it asks together, which is how you make any price fair. Out beyond the fences, the map waits. The handler will rename failure several times before lunch. The lab man will sign, something that keeps him in rooms with windows. The building will remember our feet as honest. The door will keep blinking twice at first light for people we taught how to walk it. We take the road the book drew. We set our weight into the future like a stretcher carrying a life we decided to keep. Night meets us halfway, like it always has when we were brave enough to ask. Orbit held.